Thinking up to here, the cloaked man clenched his teeth then bit down on his tongue, intentionally injuring it in the process. With a mouthful of his own blood essence, he spit it out onto the refining soul banner. Want to leave? He don't dream. Today none of you should think of leaving. Once his words went out, the originally weakened and unable to move devilish face suddenly became enveloped in a red light, and a malicious howling and crying face resounded around everyone. The devilish face moved and suddenly soared into the air. Before long it was already rushing over to Wuxia, ready to begin a second round of attacks. The cloaked man let out a chuckle then sneered. I want to see what method you use to defend yourself this time. Wuxia was unable to lift one of his arms, his spiritual power was practically drained, and his entire body was littered with injuries. When Hushi saw that the devilish face was about to eat Wuxia's head in one go, she suddenly summoned a golden ball of flames in her hands and flew over to the devilish face. When the cloaked man saw her actions, he began to laugh out loud. Ignorant child, the black devil's face has a spirit body. How could an insignificant fire harm it? But the smile on his face was quickly wiped away, because once the golden flame made contact with the devilish face, the sound of burning sounded out, and the devilish face twisted. It let out a pained expression before trying its best to run away. The cloaked man paled in fear. Spiritual fire? How can this be? You're only at foundation establishment stage. Even if you were able to practice and conjure up heavenly fire, you would still be unable to hurt the devilish face to this degree. Just what type of person are you? The black devilish face was a spirit. It feared all spiritual power attacks, but at the same time, it dirted spiritual power. Adding on to that was his blood essence, which supported the devilish face even further. Even if spiritual fire attacked the devilish face, it was reasonable to assume that his blood essence could dissolve it. But how could the cloaked man have expected the spiritual fire Hushi released to have such high spiritual power and essence purity? His shock didn't last long though. Soon after, the cloaked man burst out into laughter again. Regardless of where your spiritual fire came from, for you to be able to release spiritual fire with such pure essence must mean that your soul is much more solid than that of an ordinary person. As long as my refining soul banner is able to swallow you and that youngster at nascent soul stage, its strength will definitely increase by tenfold. Ha ha ha. Coming here this time can't be considered a loss. Right after saying this, a black thread flew out from the cloaked man's hands. Before Hushi would react, it had already restricted all of her actions. Zaze, you're now my most precious treasure and the best food for my devilish face. If I were to let you die, where would I find someone with as solid a soul as yourself? Obediently wait here for me. Wait for my devilish face to swallow that youngster with nascent soul stage. Then, I'll properly receive you. Ha ha ha. After saying so, the cloaked man's figure flashed and he directly threw himself at Wuxia. The current Wuxia was completely spent. He was even unable to use the killing sky sword. Killing him would be a simple feat however. Just as the cloaked man flew up, a strong wind suddenly hit him. Pung was the only sound that was heard and the cloaked man felt as if he had been hit by an iron board. His entire person fell down, and he let out a groan when he hit the floor. Ayaya, my bottle gourd one, my fine wine, it all spilled. The entire thing spilled. Outrageous youngster, actually daring to spill my fine wine. Quickly compensate me. Hushi suddenly blanked. She knew this voice and its all too familiar intonation. Sure enough, the wrinkled face of an old man appeared in front of her face, growing larger and larger as the pungent smell of wine hit her in the face. When the old fellow seemed to have clearly seen her, he suddenly let out a laugh. Ayaya, my obedient disciple. How could you be here? Ah, how coincidental. Too coincidental. Seeing as you can't move, has someone bullied you? You tell me and I'll go hit him for you. One bottle gourd. A type of vine that's grown for its fruit. When harvested young, it can be eaten as a vegetable, and when harvested mature, it can be used as a utensil once dried. After speaking up to here, the old fellow suddenly shook his bottle gourd around and mischievously laughed. However, since your master's wine is gone, shouldn't you, as a disciple, express hey mischievous laughter? For a moment, Hushi was unable to respond. The sudden turnaround was too theatrical. She lowly coughed. Untie me first. Okay. Okay. Then you have to give me wine, clever disciple. The old man's black hands raised and were just about to move to untie her when he abruptly paused and said, Wrong, clever disciple. You still haven't called me master. If you don't call me master, how can I untie you? I'm only saving my clever disciple. Hushy's mouth twitched and she fiercely stared at him. You're threatening me. Hey, how can that be considered a threat? In the mountain. Didn't you agree to pay respects to this old man as your master? When did I agree? The old man's face looked like that of a rascal as he winked and pointed at Wuxia, beginning to make a fuss. Yeah, this fellow's injuries aren't shallow. If you don't quickly provide critical care, his cultivation will drop from nascent soul stage. Zze, how pitiful, how unfortunate there's nobody to save him. Hushy looked over at the bloody and barely breathing Wuxia and clenched her teeth, spitting out 2 words. Master. 1. Yeah, clever disciple. The old man's eyebrows raised in joy when he heard those 2 words, 1, come from Hushy's mouth. He waved his hand, and the black rope tied around Hushy's body also fell down. Hushy didn't bother to talk to him, and quickly walked over to Wuxian's side. The first thing she did was to give him a pill to swallow. At this point, Wuxian's mind was already hazy. When he opened his eyes and saw her, he murmured, Fortunately Wang Fei is fine otherwise. Master will definitely be worried of your death, fool. Hushy picked up a silver needle and efficiently stuck it into his body, so his injury could be prevented from worsening. Then she hoarsely said, Idiot! Whose life could be more important than your own? You're about to die and yet you're still afraid that Nangong you will be worried. At this moment, the cloaked man that had been knocked away by the bottle gourd had finally stood back up from the roof. He felt dizzy from being knocked, but his body didn't have any injuries. When he saw Hushy, who had been untied, and that crazy old man, he suddenly angrily shouted, Which smelly old man actually dares to spoil my affairs? Are you tired of living? The old man clicked his tongue and shook his head in response. You're a part of the younger generation. How come you lack manners? Don't you understand to respect the old and cherish the young? It was clearly you who had knocked over my wine. Isn't it the right thing to pay me back? Zze, you even dare to plot against my beautiful, clever disciple. Look at you wearing a cloak in the evening. How shameful! I see that you must be jealous of my disciple's good looks. This annoying troublemaker directly angered the cloaked man enough for him to want to spit out a mouthful of blood. Hushy's mouth twitched before she interrupted the old man's words. Master, compared to this fellow, which one of you is stronger? Since she had already agreed that this old man was his master, Hushy wouldn't be unreasonable anymore. The old man rubbed his bottle gourd and mischievously laughed. Well, that's hard to say. If I drank some wine, this old man would be able to beat 3 cows. If I haven't drank wine, Master knock him down and I guarantee that, in the future, you'll have so much wine that you wouldn't be able to drink it all. Really? Clever disciple, you better not cheat me. Hushy's hands hugged her chest as she smiled at him. If I'm cheating you, then you can expel me. Aya, how could that be done? You're the clever disciple that I worked so hard to get. 1 master. In Chinese, master is comprised of 2 characters, shifu. Whilst Hushy and her master were speaking, neither of them tried to conceal their words. This directly caused the cloaked man to become angry again. You dare underestimate me, directly go and die for me. Right after saying this, bursts of bone-chilling cold wind started up and faced Hushy and everyone else. In response, the old man threw the empty bottle gourd away, and his figure disappeared from his original spot. Hushy hadn't even reacted to what he had just done when she suddenly heard pung. Soon after the bitter cold wind dissipated, and even the black fog disappeared, leaving nothing else in front of them. That's right, precisely. Nothing was left. The cloaked man's presence had completely disappeared. The old man rubbed his black palm and guiltily looked toward Hushy. With forced laughter he said, Aya, it seems like I didn't control my strength and miscalculated. Hushy frowned. Miscalculated? By how far? He hiccuped. That. The old man looked at the sky. Just then I wasn't looking at the direction and didn't see where he flew off to. Ha ha ha. So clever, disciple. Even though I didn't knock him flat, your master can be considered to have exerted energy, right? Moreover, by the time he falls back onto the ground, he'll definitely fall flat. He wouldn't even be able to crawl back up after 6 hours. About that wine. Hashi narrowed her eyes and silently watched the old man for a long time. She was certain that this old man had deliberately not laid a heavy hand on the cloaked man. She stared at the old man until he nervously scratched his head. Then she loosened her expression and lightly laughed. Rest assured, there will be plenty of wine. In any event, thanks to Master for saving us. Aiya, clever disciple, you're too considerate and too filial. Your master loves you the most. Smelly old man, your entire body is full of louse and wine. Quickly get away from me. Clever disciple, don't be like this. Master likes to hug you. How can you decline? Do you believe that I won't pour all the wine out in front of your face? Clever disciple, I know my wrongs. You must give fine wine as presents, to one's elders/superiors as a sign of respect. To Master The fight between Hushi's group and the cloaked man started quickly, and also ended quite quickly. However, it still roused up quite a lot of movement. Just speaking of Morong family, a few of their houses collapsed. The children in Morong family had been scared by the shaking and were reduced to shivering in their rooms. None of them dared to step foot outside. When Jin Ling's imperial guards arrived at the scene and saw the terrifying fighting going on, they were filled with fear. How would they dare to continue investigating? So naturally, this matter remained unsettled. However, who could have thought that Morong Manor would have disappeared just 3 days after the fight occurred at Morong Manor that night? In the span of a night, all of Morong Manor's guards, manservants, servant girls, and children had disappeared without a trace. Even their bones couldn't be found. What was the scariest part of the whole ordeal was that the houses inside Morong Manor all looked as if they had been burned by a fire. Apart from ashes and fallen walls, there was nothing else. Morong family was one of the 4 most influential families in Yanjing City. Yet in a breath's time all of its people had disappeared without even the smallest bit of a trace left behind. This matter left the people of Yanjing City alarmed and restless for a few days. The most worried were the remaining 3 most influential families. Although they were busy with receiving the power of Morong family, they were still wary and fearful. The enemy was just too powerful. They actually dared to thoroughly eliminate Morong family, right in front of the Imperial Guards. Would there be a day when it was their own turn? Chapter 491 Shameless. As Hushi was listening to Shisan's report, a grave expression crept onto her face. By the side, Gu Lufeng raised a cup and lightly drank a sip of tea before smiling and saying, "Their subordinates are truly fast. As long as they're a useless chess piece, they'll be completely and utterly eliminated. It's really ruthless enough, absolute enough." Gu Lufeng switched the topic when he saw concern surface in Hushi's eyes. After passing through this event concerning Morong Manor and Shengda Hall, I'm afraid that they'll soon know that genius doctor she is you. Shisan, you have too many treasures that cause people to become crazy with longing on your hands. In the future, you have to tread carefully. Hushi nodded her head. You can be at ease. I know when I should look after my own hide, and when I should press forward and slap faces. If they want the things in my hands, then they should try and see if they have the skills. I want to see if they have the life to come and leave. Gu Lufeng laughed. Sometimes I really don't know where you learned such bizarre words from. Press forward and slap faces. Although these words are vulgar, their meaning is just right. Hushi ignored Gu Liufeng's teasing and looked at Shisan. Is there any other news? Shisan knit his brow and hesitated for a moment before cautiously saying, "There is another piece of news. This subordinate doesn't know whether it's fake or true, but one of Shengda Hall's young waiters overheard a customer and merchant, who had come from far away, say these things. The news is about the Ice Fairy Lotus and the King of Hell." Hushi's eyes dimmed and cold air unconsciously emitted from her body. Still, she lightly laughed and said, "Oh, let me hear it." That customer and merchant were saying that around Songming Kingdom, and Haoyu Kingdom, it's rumored that the Ice Fairy Lotus treated several martial artists who were infected with an odd poison whilst in sealed dragon domain. Those martial artists, their sects, and family members are all extremely thankful toward the Ice Fairy Lotus. They even named her as Xian Nuren Doctor. It's heard that because of this matter, the Doctors Association has even promoted her rank, and nowadays, she's the highest-ranked doctor in Miluo continent as a 6th-ranked doctor. Hushi was startled when she heard the news. But before she could say anything, Gu Lufeng already erupted into angry words. Does that Black Lotus Flower Fairy still want to save face? Obviously it was Yu Shiyu who saved people in 100 Herb Mist. She actually dares to steal all recognition? Has she already forgotten that it was her careless treatment that caused several people to be reduced to puddles of thin blood? How can this woman become shameless to this extent? For a moment Shi-san was calm before he suddenly realized that his family's master's contributions had all been claimed by some other woman, and immediately became angered. What's up with that bullshit fairy? Why would she falsely claim young Miss contributions? Does she want her face anymore? Could it be that those saved martial artists wouldn't refute her claims? Hushi coldly laughed and her mouth curved, slowly saying, that's why this news has spread in mainly Songming Kingdom and Haoyu Kingdom. Songming Kingdom is entirely under Feng family's control. If they wanted to completely control public opinion, it would be an easy thing. And Haoyu Kingdom is very far away from Jinling Kingdom. There were few people from there who came to Sealed Dragon Domain. Even if a few people knew the truth, they wouldn't go against Feng family just for the sake of some insignificant doctor's innocence. Shi-san became so angered he clenched his fists and furiously said, don't tell me we'll just allow that rotten fairy steal young Miss contributions? Not only this, but nowadays, there's a widespread rumor in Songming Kingdom. Rumors that His Majesty King of Hell admires the Ice Fairy Lotus humanity, benevolence, virtuousness, and kindness. Therefore, he has already intended to bring up marriage with Feng family. But His Majesty King of Hell is clearly acts partial toward you. Gu Lufeng couldn't help but sneer at this. That's right. Anybody who saw that Black Lotus Flower Fairy's appearance whilst in 100 Herb Mist must have been experiencing nausea for half a day afterwards. Nangong, you would not be wanting to marry her unless his brain has short-circuited. Shi-san was still feeling aggrieved. But that rotten fairy has used your contributions to become a 6th-ranked doctor. I'm too bitter. Don't worry about it. Hushi waved her hand and indifferently laughed. If she wants to jump, let her jump at ease. The higher she climbs, the more tragic her fall will be. As for the Doctors Association, 6th-ranked doctor, would I pay attention to that? After saying this, Hushi called Gu Lufeng to follow her as they walked into Gu Yolan's room. The only one left behind was Shi-san, who was still standing in his original spot. For a while now he had admired his family's young miss, so he felt indignant at the injustice that his young miss was facing. When Hushi first entered Gu Yolan's room, the first thing she saw wasn't Gu Yulan sitting on her bed, but instead she saw a lifeless Gu Yidao who was standing upright beside her bed. Hearing sounds, Gu Yulan turned her head and saw Gu Lufeng entering the room. Happiness quickly flooded her features and a joyful smile appeared. You've come, Lufeng? Gu Lufeng immediately quickened his step and rushed over to Gu Yolan's side. He took a nearby pillow and adjusted it behind her so that she could sit more comfortably. Mother, are you feeling better? Gu Yulan merely laughed and didn't respond. Soon after, she picked up a nearby red rope and weaved it into a strange design. It could be said that the current Gu Yulan had improved but still hadn't. After passing by this difficult time full of torment, the cold food pill addiction Gu Yulan had disappeared. However, even though she was sober, after all was said and done, her mind had still received injuries. She lost practically all of her memories, and the only person she recognized was Gu Lufeng. After she lost her memories, she would always take this red rope and weave the same strange pattern whilst mumbling incoherently under her breath. At times, her face would be full of hurt and concern, but other times, she would have a joyous expression painted on her face. Gu Lufeng gently brought some of her scattered hairs and brought it back behind her ear. His voice was soft as he said, "Perhaps this is the best conclusion. For Mother, if she could forget all the torment and suffering she experienced these past 20 years, she would be the happiest." Although she can't remember anything now and her wisdom is that of a young child's, Compared to the past 20 years, her life now is tranquil and mild. But my Jiujiu is the most unfortunate. For the sake of my mother and I, he silently endured, fought and persisted for so long. Yet in the end, he was left with just this one soul. Hashi softly sighed. I'm sorry, I can't recover the people whose souls had been taken away. In spite of her words, Gu Lufeng laughed. I haven't even thanked you and you're actually saying sorry to me? Shiyu, do you want me to owe you until my next lifetime? Anyway, isn't Jiujiu also happy now? He lost his souls, so he now lacks consciousness and desires. He only recognizes mother, just like a most loyal guard, defending by mother's side. Perhaps this is what he wanted to most in over 20 years. Hashi nodded her head and confirmed Gu Liufeng's theory. After losing his soul, Gui Dao was equal to a human body with no wisdom or spirit. He lacked desires and heart. But she didn't expect that after seeing Gu Yulan he would stick so closely by her side. One time, a stray cat had run in front of Gu Yulan. He had nimbly picked it up and set it down before rushing it away. Even though he lost his soul, he still didn't forget what he wanted to do the most, which was to protect her, and to ensure that she didn't receive any harm. This attitude made it impossible for Hashi to remain unmoved. Gu Lufeng looked at his mother's peaceful face and quietly said, Actually, Jiujiu isn't my biological Jiujiu. I don't even know what his previous surname was, nor do I know why he changed it to Gu. Even more so, I don't know how he and mother came to know each other. All I know is that he's been treating me so well ever since I can remember. So well in fact that I resented the heavens. Why wasn't my biological father Jiujiu instead of that brute Morong Feng? But nowadays everything is good. Gu Lufeng stood up and the smile on his face no longer had a hint of melancholy. Instead, it was calm. All of my hatred and desires have come to the perfect end. The rest of my time will be dedicated to fulfilling my promise to you, to serve you. Shiyu, if there's any need to use any of my territory, please, don't hesitate to ask. Hashi didn't get to respond to his claim when the sound of Dan Dan's crying voice suddenly rang out from outside the room. Mother, that bad old man stole my freshly steamed meat. Woo woo woo. Mother, you must take responsibility for Dan Dan ah. Aiya, you little pig. Tell me how you don't speak any reason ah. This dish has clearly been prepared by my clever disciple. What's wrong with me eating a little? And I haven't even talked about you yet. You're so small, how come you eat so much? Where does all the food you eat go? So much delicious food has entered you, a little pig's stomach. Isn't that a waste of resources? Woo woo woo. I dislike this bad old man mother. Dan Dan doesn't want him to be mother's master, doesn't want him to steal Dan Dan's food. Mother, is it okay if you drive him away? Hearing the big and small voices from nearby and distant places, Hashi felt her temple throbbing at their argument. She expressionlessly looked at Gu Lufeng as she faintly said, If you can settle those two annoyances for me, I'd even be fine with calling you master. At first, Gu Lufeng blanked, then he burst into rambunctious laughter. I didn't expect there to be any problem that would leave you, Shiyu, helpless ah. I thought you were already omnipotent. Hashi blankly stared at him for a moment before lowering her voice to say, During this period of time you need to first deal with good virtue hall's matters. Someone also needs to be trained for the matter pertaining Shi Lang, and that group of children entering. When good virtue hall's matters are on the right track, hand it over to shopkeeper Zhou. His temperament is mild, which is the best suited for dealing with children. Following this, I have another very important matter for you. Hashi's tone turned serious at this moment, and even Gu Lufeng withdrew his smiling expression. Nodding his head, Shiyu, rest assured. Those children's temperaments are determined and steady. I'm certain that their strength will help you in the future. The children rescued from Morong Manor's dungeon mainly consisted of homeless street urchins. They didn't even know their own surnames. They all mutually went by the same few nicknames of Little Wolf, Naughty Monkey, and Little Stone. After they began following Hashi changed their surnames to Shi, just like she did with Shijia and them. As for their names, they could each think of their own. At a low price, Hashi had someone by Morong Manor, which consisted of the burnt buildings that had turned into haunted houses. She named it Home of Good Virtue. and arrange for those children to learn and train in those houses. The house's nature was analogous to the orphanages in her previous life. After finishing instructing Gu Lufeng, Hashi turned around to leave the room. Once she exited the door, she was welcomed with a little pink pig throwing itself at her. In one motion, she carried it and held it within her bosom. The front of her clothes was instantly soaked with the little fellow's tears. Following his sobs was a magic voice in her head that was tearfully complaining. "Mother, woo woo woo. You must take responsibility of Dan Dan ah. Dan Dan is suffering even more than the white cabbage in the floor one. You even know of white cabbage? How many melodramatic dramas did you see then?" On the outside there was the old man who was drinking, whilst letting out satisfying burps, and mischievously laughing. "Clever disciple, the wine's almost gone. Aren't you going to replenish some for your master? And that snake soup from this morning was delicious ah. Master wants to eat more tonight." Hashi felt that she would rather eliminate 100 Morong families and several cloaked persons combined before she would want to deal with these two big and small clowns. It's been a long time since she's had such days. What Hashi didn't expect was that she would unexpectedly receive a transmitting slip 3 days later. This slip was different from the simple and crude one she had in her hand. The slip was silver, and there was a dark red design drawn on by a cinnabar. The first thing Hashi thought of was the middle-aged man from 100 Herb Mist who bitterly hated Feng Lianing, and had lost his wife and child. Hashi channeled her spiritual power into the slip and burned it. Soon after, a male's rough and hoarse voice, carrying anger and resentment, rang out in her ears. As she listened to the man narrating, a cold smile appeared on Hashi's lips, and her eyes shone with a deep profoundness which was faintly discernible. She quickly asked for Shi-san to appear in front of her. Dropping her voice, she said, "Shi-san, you need to substitute me to deal with something." "What matter? Don't hesitate to instruct me." Hashi took the silver slip that was a third of the way burnt, and softly entered a few words inside. Then she poured spiritual power inside it, allowing it to fly up. After the silver slip flew away, Hashi slowly told Shi-san what task she wanted him to go complete. The days passed as Dan Dan and the old man unnecessarily quarreled through them. Soon, the date approached for the big hunting match that the invitation from Ouyang family mentioned. The only thing that left Hashi gloomy was that when she announced she was to go to the hunting match alone, both Wu Xian and Gu Lufeng firmly opposed her. Wu Xian's tone was heavy and his voice was full of refusal. "Wang Fei, you can't go alone, let this subordinate go with you." Hashi frowned. "Your injury still hasn't healed yet. If you use a large amount of spiritual power, you'll definitely injure your foundation. When that time comes, you'll quite possibly fall from nascent soul stage down to gold core stage, and be unable to even near it, nascent soul, again in this lifetime." Wu Xian anxiously retorted. "But this subordinate's responsibility is to follow and protect Wang Fei. How could this subordinate allow Wang Fei to take any chances?" Hashi's entire face was helpless. She looked at Gu Lufeng, whose expression was heavy, then looked at Wu Xian again before sighing. "Aren't you guys too wary? As far as I know, the hunting match is only held every 4 years and the host is Miluo Continent's Si de sect. The purpose of the hunting match is to search for gifted martial artists. After, Si de sect will recruit some. As for the ones Si de sect doesn't deem worthy, the imperial and aristocratic families can recruit them. Since they're looking for talent, there's a possibility for injury in the big match. However, it won't be uncalled for and bring harm to someone's life. Let alone for the fact that the big hunting match's competitors can only be at Foundation Establishment stage, Meridian stage, and Gold Core stage. There are also guards at Nascent Soul stage, and some are from the Imperial Guards. This can be said to be the safest place and experience." Speaking up to hear, Hashi raised her head. Her phoenix eyes were narrowed, but a burning fire could still be seen in them. "I want to become strong. I don't want to be bullied or suppressed by anyone. So how can I escape danger? Escape competition? 1 white cabbage in the floor. Usually used to represent children who have lost their mother. If I only hide away in safety and cultivate, I'm afraid that any movement would leave my life in danger and myself defenseless. Would I be any different from a caged canary? Is this the life I, Nalan Hushi, wish to lead? Absolutely not. Let alone the fact that I'm not alone. By my side I have Dan, Little Purple, and Long, they can help me. Hushi sighed and her tone became decisive. Therefore, if we're friends, don't dare to block me again. Wu Xian and Gu Lufeng turned to look at each other in dismay, and were momentarily speechless. Wu Xian wanted to go with her, but his injuries still hadn't completely healed. Gu Lufeng also wanted to go, but he didn't have an invitation, and the big hunting match wasn't just an event anyone could enter. The room quieted down, and for a long time, nobody spoke. Suddenly, loud laughter sounded from outside. Aiya, really deserving to be my disciple. You're ambitious and have skill. It seems this master really didn't pick the wrong disciple. Those words had just been spoken when the door opened with a pop, and an old man wearing shabby clothes and reeking of wine appeared in the doorway. He let out a satisfied hiccup and mischievously laughed. Although your words are pleasant to hear, your strength is far too weak. If you meet someone at Gold Core stage, you can risk your life. But if you run into someone at Nascent Soul stage, ZZZ, that would be far from good. Then, the clever disciple this old man worked so hard to get would be gone. Aiya. Then wouldn't the fine wine and good food be gone? Very bad, very bad. Too bad. Wu Xian and Gu Lufeng were in the midst of concern when they heard this old man run over and cause trouble. They couldn't help but become fidgety. Senior, you clearly know Hushi wants to go take risks, yet you aren't thinking of any means to get her to not. How could you only stand here making cynical remarks? Who says this old man is only making cynical remarks? When the old man heard this, he became unhappy and immediately retorted. Isn't this old man coming to think of a way? I say, clever disciple, can you just not go participate in that pain of a hunting match? If you leave, then won't this master be unable to eat fresh dishes for several months? Hushi glared at him and coldly stated, Rest assured, I'll prepare half a year's worth of dishes and fine wine for you. I hope you don't drink yourself to death, master. Ha. Drinking yourself to death and bursting full of food. Isn't that life's best pleasantries? You know your master's intentions far too well. When the old man heard Hushi's words, he wasn't angry, rather he burst into rambunctious laughter. Since you're so clever, your master must also fulfill his obligations. After saying this, the old man disappeared from his spot and brought Hushi along with him. Wu Xian and Gu Lufeng both turned pale with fright from this stunt. They went to follow them, but found that they couldn't even sense the breaths of either of them. Soon after, they heard the old man's loud laughter ring out from a distant place. You two babies, rest assured. I'm only teaching my clever disciple some defensive skills. This will guarantee that she'll return from the big hunting match safe and sound. 10 days had already passed since that old beggar man had brought Hushi away, and the big hunting match was just 3 days away from starting. Alone Gu Lufeng sat at the base of Tsang Mountain in B courtyard. He blankly stared off into the distance with wrinkled brows whilst drinking. Suddenly, he felt a frosty wind blowing from behind his back, causing him to shiver from the cold. By the time he reacted and lifted his head to look at the doorway, he couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. You. You're back. After uttering these words, Gu Lufeng actually looked frightened. He looked at the sorry figure of Shiyu in front of him, and inevitably felt like he was staring at a dangerous animal. That's right now Shiyu was truly a sorry figure. All her clothes were tattered and torn, and even the top of her head was coated in dust. Her originally satin-like hair now resembled a bird's nest, and her face was somewhat unsightly. Her eyes were deep-set and she looked tired. Her phoenix eyes seemed to hold a colder light than what she had 10 days prior. Gu Lufeng strode forward and worriedly welcomed her back. Shiyu, you're fine, right? Where have you been? Your master instructed you to practice. Don't mention that inhumane old man to me. Hushi spit each word out, one by one, and the cold air surrounding her seemed to grow more gloomy the moment her master was mentioned. Gu Lufeng lowered his voice and couldn't help but softly ask, What did he do? What did he do? Hushi bit her teeth and chillingly said, He threw me in the middle of a sword fight, inside. Inside is entirely filled with swords emanating the chi of gold core and nascent soul stage martial artists. Then he told me that I was to go inside and train. He said that after one day, he would take me out, and I was to work on making sure my spiritual power wasn't depleted, and that I wasn't hit by any swords during that time. In the end, 1 day passed, then 2, and finally 10, and that old man still hadn't appeared. I was stuck in the sword fight for 10 days and nights. I went without food and sleep. I was forced to constantly block the sword's attacks. Not only that, the longer I stayed there, the more those swords tore up the mountains and rocks. Every day, dust and sand flew around. I couldn't even open my eyes, and every breath I took filled my lungs with dust and sand. Just a little bit more and I would have suffocated to death. Speaking up to here, Hushy's face twisted and a raging flame appeared in her eyes as she swore. Smelly old man, just you wait. The next time I get my hands on you, I'll give all the fine wine and delicious food to the pig, right in front of your face. I'll let you see but not taste, smell but not drink. Just you wait. Gu Lufeng lowly coughed twice and covered his mouth to stifle his laughter. Hi. Shiyu, I do feel like, even though you haven't advanced in rank, your power and killing spirit has greatly increased. How did you escape from the sword fight? One had to know that the swords never stopped swinging. Even if Hushy wanted to get some food from her space, she was completely unable to find the opportunity. If she loosened for even a second, she could have been chopped in half. The torture and hardship from these 10 days were obvious. Hushy played down her situation, but shock still appeared in Gu Liufeng's expression. However, his shock quickly disappeared. No wonder, I've always felt that your cultivation wasn't lower than mine. It appears that you can already fight against nascent soul and gold core stage martial artists. Little Yuer, are you certain that you could win against someone at gold core stage now? Hushy frowned then nodded her head. If they're at high-level gold core stage or below, I'm confident that I'll be able to best them. If they're at the summit of gold core stage, it's no question that I'd at least escape in one piece. How did I get out? Hushy unhappily answered. Obviously, I fought against hundreds of swords before rushing out of the sword fight. Don't tell me you thought that I would allow myself to be trapped in there and die of thirst or starvation. Her self-disciple wasn't only from training for 10 days in the sword fight. It was also due to what happened after her elder Jiang. Once again, she had a taste of her Maha inheritance. Even though her cultivation hadn't raised by much, her cultivation and actual fighting skills were much stronger than before. Gu Lufeng released a breath and said, Now, if you go to the hunting competition and there aren't any major mishaps, nobody will be able to threaten you. You guys were the one with groundless fears in the first place. Hushy softly smiled and retorted, I'll go inside to wash up first this afternoon. I plan to set out to Breaking Spirit Mountain. Breaking Spirit Mountain, as the name implied, was a place that ordinary people couldn't enter and return from. Breaking Spirit Mountain is a mountain range that stretches thousands of kilometers from south to north. Running across all 3 countries, it was a mountain range far more vast than Song Mountain. Breaking Spirit Mountain's highest point was located in the middle of Jinling country. There, thick fog swirled around the mountain all year, and there were countless magic beasts that called the mountain home. The ranks of the magic beasts there were quite high. It could be said to be second only to those in the magic beast forest. Moreover, most of the magic beasts in Breaking Spirit Mountain had lost all rationality. They were completely savage. The magic beasts were cunning and treacherous in a completely different way than the ones in the magic beast forest. The magic beasts residing here were even able to take the shape of a human, so normally few people would willingly step onto the mountain. However, because of how savage the magical beasts were, they would even occasionally come off the mountain to harm people. Therefore, the elders from the 4 biggest influential families and the largest sects created a large array to prevent the magical beasts from coming down and prevent others from entering. Afterwards, the 4 biggest sects suddenly opened up a relatively safe location at the top of the mountain one year. Inside, there were numerous magical beasts at 6th rank and lower which could be hunted, and any other magical beasts weren't drawn to the location. Every 4 years, a hunting competition would take place, and everyone participating would be sent to this location via a teleportation array. Once they arrived, They would all kill the magical beasts. Every time they killed a magical beast, they would need to obtain an internal pill. This way they would earn points. Whomever ended up with the most points would be declared the champion of that year's competition. The more they held this competition, the more Miluo continent buzzed about it, so naturally, there were more and more martial artists competing each year. This was because not only would you obtain good achievements during the big hunting competition, you would also earn many of the large sect's interest. As for the elite disciples of the large sects, if they were able to perform exceptionally well, they would be able to receive great honor within the sect, earning them much more rewards and resources. Jinling country is actually a very small country, so for the hunting competition to be held here was merely based on the geographical location of Breaking Spirit Mountain. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a sect or the imperial family handling the event, they would each treat it as a major event. And the people of Jinling country who were able to receive an invitation were very few and far between. After saying this, Hushi began walking inside the room. But who knew that Wu Xian's figure would suddenly flash and come forth? Without waiting for Hushi to say anything, he stuffed the things in his hands toward Hushi's and in a lowered voice he said, "Wang Fei, while you're participating in the hunting competition, please wear this. During a crucial point, perhaps it can help you pass it." While saying these words, Wu Xian's face seemed unsightly. He seemed to be full of discontentment and restlessness. But soon, his expression changed into sincerity as he asked Hushi this. Hushi held the jade slip in her hand and inspected it. No matter how she looked at it, all she saw was an ordinary jade slip that was light green in color and held no peculiar points. She then raised her head and looked at Wu Xian with a beseeching expression. She couldn't help but sigh before saying, "Okay, I'll accept it." 3 days later, Hushi arrived at Jinling's imperial family's temporary residence at Breaking Soul Mountain. The residence was enormous and decorated splendidly, presenting a dazzling sight to all who beheld it. That is, except for martial artists. To martial artists, all this couldn't meet the eyes of an immortal cultivator. Just having arrived, Hushi was just about to pull out her invitation card, but she was interrupted by the sound of a woman's surprised voice. "Gong! Gongzi!" Surprised, Hushi turned around and came face to face with an elegant and beautiful young lady. The young lady's appearance seemed familiar, but no matter how long Hushi pondered over it, she couldn't recall where she had seen her. "Gongzi, it's really you?" The young girl's face was filled with satisfaction and she lightly ran over. "Thanking Gongzi for saving my life last time. Has Gongzi fared well after leaving Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory?" Saved her life. Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. Once the young girl's words were out, Hushi immediately remembered her. "You're Shen Qingchua?" Hushi had always possessed the ability to remember everyone she met, but at the time, the young girl was such a sorry figure, a complete contrast to her now, as she was wearing magnificent clothes, so the Hushi didn't immediately connect the two. Shen Qingchua was extremely surprised. Each time she spoke, her voice quivered. "Gongzi, I never thought you would actually remember me. I engraved the memory of Gongzi saving me. I haven't forgotten it since." The young lady's face was bright red and her voice was quivering and quiet, like that of a tiny fly. Her entire person looked like a flower that had been touched by dew. She emitted a shy aura and her eyes were sincere and clear. In response, Hushi's tone unconsciously softened by several degrees when she saw her. "It was merely a slight effort, young lady Shen. There's no need to be so troubled." Shen Qingchua immediately wanted to refute those words. That wasn't a mere effort. It was a life-saving grace that she had etched into her memory. But before she could even speak, a male's soft voice sounded out from behind her back. "Chuar, is this your new friend?" When Shen Qingchua heard that voice, she immediately turned around and affectionately called out, "Xiao Shu 1. This is the person I spoke to you about, the Gongzi who saved me in Sealed Dragon Domain. If it weren't for her, Chuar would have long died in that mist and I wouldn't be able to see Xiao Shu and Ye Tu anymore." Hushi raised her head to size up the newcomer. All she saw was a man that looked to be about 27 or 8 years old. He looked to be cultured and refined, but when she sensed that his cultivation had terrifyingly already reached the middle of nascent soul stage. and standing behind him were a couple disciples, each of whom were wearing cyan-colored clothes. Most of these disciples were already at a high level of gold core and meridian stage. When the man heard Shen Qingchua's words, he reached a shaking hand out and rested it atop her head. With unhappiness coating his voice, he said, "You still have the nerve to speak of that. That day, we urged you not to go. We told you that Sealed Dragon Domain's border was extremely dangerous, and didn't want you to follow your senior male and female students there. But you? Not only do you not listen, you actually even colluded with younger students to run away from the group, and sneakily run to the secret territory. Fortunately, there was someone to save you. Otherwise, if your Ye came to know that your body was in Jinling country, he would have wreaked havoc on Jinling country. If you continue to disobey us, we'll lock you up on Qingxia Mountain for 100 years. You'll have to cultivate every day and you won't be able to come down." When Shen Qingchua heard his threat, her face immediately showed suffering and she grabbed onto his sleeve and looked up at him with pleading eyes. "Xiao Shushu, I already know my wrongs, don't scold me, okay? Especially not in front of Gongzi's face. Can't you leave me some face, ah?" 1 Xiaoshu, her paternal uncle, 2 Ye, paternal grandfather. The man cast a glance at Shen Qingchua before looking away and slowly walking forward before stopping in front of Hushi. He extended his hand out and introduced himself. "I am Qingxia Sect's Shen Senator. Many thanks to you for saving Chuar's life in Sealed Dragon Domain. I still haven't asked, what is Gongzi's name?" Hushi calmly extended her hand out and grasped his. "I am Shiyu." After seeing him, Shen Sun was immediately filled with more respect for this youngster. Not only was he respectful because he saved Shen Qingchua's life, but he saw that he was a mere foundation establishment stage. Yet when he faced him, he emitted a pressure that was neither servile nor overbearing, and it was completely calm. Moreover, Qingxia sect was one of the 4 largest sects in Miluo continent and Chuar's identity within the sect was special. However, he showed no signs of wanting to curry favor. When Shen Qingchua heard Hushi introduce herself, she mulled over the 2 characters Shiyu for a few moments. She sneaked a glance at the youth in front of her. He was quiet, elegant, and outstanding. He was clear and bright, similar to the moonlight, and he surpassed the sky and mountains' snow. This type of person hadn't appeared before, even in Shen Qingchua's fantasies. Moreover, he was so brave and powerful, he had saved her from her nightmare in hell. When Shen Qingchua thought of this, her face turned a shade redder and she lowered her gaze, not daring to look at Hushi any longer. She tugged at Shen Sen's sleeve and lowered her head, and occasionally, she glanced up at Hushi. Her voice was that of a mosquito's as she said, "Has Shi Gongzi come to participate in the hunting competition?" "That's right." "Then, my fellow students and I have also come to participate." Shen Qingchua's voice was filled with expectations as she suggested, "It would be better if we went together to the sign-up place. If the number we pull out are close, perhaps we'll be set to nearby positions." To enter the Breaking Spirit Mountain, you had to go into the teleporting array in the order that you drew your number. However, where you teleported was completely random. Therefore, there wasn't anything such as being sent to closer positions, just because the numbers they drew were close. Shen Sun lowly coughed and held back his smile. But he didn't go to expose his family's niece's thoughts. "Shi Gongzi, if you haven't come with a sect, it would be better if you go with us to the meeting place, wouldn't it?" Hushi didn't hesitate to nod her head. Rather than going alone, it would be better if she went with Qingxia sect, which would save her many inconveniences along the way. So together, the few people avoided the crowds and walked to the nearby residence. Although the road there wasn't long, it still allowed Shen Sen's impression of this youth named Shiyu to become better and better. He was elegant, his voice was pleasant, and when he spoke his words were neither servile nor overbearing. There wasn't the slightest hint of a loose, low-level cultivator who felt inferior or bitter. Moreover, Shen Sun had originally planned to talk to him about cultivation, and kindly point some things out to him. However, who could have known that Shiyu's knowledge of cultivation, dantians, and meridians would even be beneficial to him? As for the disciples following behind Shen Sun, they were currently swarming Shiyu and incessantly asking questions, completely forgetting that Shiyu was a low-level foundation establishment stage cultivator. "Shi Gongzi, Why do my knees feel slightly sluggish whenever I practice the basics of my water attribute? Not only that, the higher my cultivation becomes, the more that sluggish feeling in my knee turns to pain. Hushi cast a glance at the young disciple. She observed his color and also used her spiritual power to look over his knee, before she slowly said, "Your constitution leans more toward yin and coldness, and the water attribute is classified as negative, so once you practice it, your yin and cold air will become congested in your joints. When you're younger, it won't be clear, but when you're older or perhaps when your water attribute is promoted, you may find it hard to even walk." Anxious, the disciple immediately asked, "Shigongzi, are there any ways to help me?" "That is very easy." Hushi faintly smiled. "All you have to do is gather cassia twig, acaranthes root, earthworm, chin nai, rhizoma atractilidis, and immortal spirit. Then boil all of these ingredients until it becomes medicinal juice. It's best if you have someone who's an expert in the fire attribute to come do this for you. Then each time you practice your water attribute, spread it onto the afflicted areas. After a long time, the dampness in your joints will be removed and you won't feel pain anymore." When the disciple heard her orders, he felt overjoyed and repeatedly thanked Hushi. Hushi's response caused the rest of Qing Xiasek's disciples to be unable to wait anymore. At once, they all started asking her questions. "Shigongzi, after my daily meditation, my chest always hurts and I feel nauseous. Do you know why this could be happening?" "Shigongzi, I have an old father who's now 53. A few years prior his body was well, but these past 2 years, he frequently feels dizzy and sleepy. Do you know why this?" "Shigongzi." "Shigongzi." Shinsun looked at the group of youngsters surrounding Hushi and intimately calling out her name, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, what left him the most amazed at was that these disciples' questions were of all sorts of problems, and each one was odd and suspicious. Even their Qing Xiasek's 4th-ranked doctors weren't able to cure them. However, this youth in front of him, which looked nothing more than 16 or 17 years old, was able to answer each one that came her way. The youth's voice was mild and elegant, and he spoke clearly. His black and white eyes were clear and calm, causing people to inexplicably want to trust him. He was such a remarkable man. No wonder Chuor would be so captivated and think of him so much. Although his cultivation was still quite low, he was still young. And if they were going to compare minds, his beat Chuor's many times over. If you think about it a little, it'll one day shine. Shinsun cast a glance at his niece, and saw that her eyes were glued onto Shigongzi's figure. Her expression contained shyness and cowardice. When he saw this, he couldn't help but tease. "I say, Chuor, isn't this the sweetheart you missed and longed for over these few months and days? Now that you've finally met again, why aren't you going up and speaking to him?" Shin Qingchua shyly buried her face in her hands and mumbled, "Xiao Shushu, how could you say such nonsense? What sweetheart? If Shigongzi hears of this, I'll lose so much face-ah." Shinsun burst out in laughter. By now, the group had already reached their destination. Shinsun and the rest of them handed over their invitation to the guard, who immediately turned respectful upon seeing it. Soon after, he nodded his head and another guard appeared. His head was bent, and he led them to their seats of honor. Hushi was the last one to hand over her invitation card. The guard in charge of checking over the invitations was originally carelessly doing so, but his expression soon turned grave. He held her invitation in his hand and refused to hand it back to Hushi. "Is there a problem with my invitation?" The guard looked at Hushi, then turned to look at Shinsun and everyone else waiting for her, and hesitation appeared on his face. His eyes immediately turned back to her and he laughed. "Gongzi's invitation card has a problem. I need someone to come verify it for me. Asking Gongzi to please wait a moment." After saying this, the guard secretly motioned to his companions before quickly exiting. Those guards' manners looked unconscious, but they quickly formed a semicircle around her, stopping her from exiting the lobby. A few moments later, that guard came back, but this time, he had 7 or 8 martial artists following behind him. Each of the martial artists were at gold core stage. The person heading the martial artists had a bearded face, making it hard to tell his age. However, His cultivation had already reached the summit of gold core stage. His tiger eyes carried a trace of chilliness as he directly stared at Hushi. His voice was quiet as he asked, "You're Shiyu?" "That's right." That martial artist immediately waved his hand and sternly ordered, "Capture her for me." Right after he said this, those martial artists behind him charged forward and surrounded Hushi. And at some unknown guards, some of the temporary residence's guards had come and formed another vague circle around the 7 or 8 martial artists. Hushi frowned and asked, "I got my invitation from Ouyang Jiangjun and came to participate in the hunting competition. May I please ask what's the meaning of all this?" That martial artist scoffed and lowly said, "Brazen traitor, you committed such a grave crime. And you actually dare to run here. You walked right into a trap. I see that you're impatient to live." After saying this, he faced the shocked martial artist standing nearby and cupped his hands together. With a clear voice he announced, "Jinling's Emperor's personal guard Luo Yingqi has provided a secret imperial decree to capture the culprit who murdered the third prince Shangguan Rue. Shiyu, your crime of murdering the third prince Shangguan Rue in the sealed dragon domain's secret territory has already been publicly announced. Do you have anything else to say?" The light in Hushi's eyes faintly turned cold and chilliness slipped across her eyes, but she didn't lose her head. "You guys say that I murdered third prince Shangguan Rue, but do you have evidence?" If she didn't remember incorrectly, Shangguan Rue should be the first pitiful victim of Feng Lianying's 5 elements blood coagulating pill. Yet, how come the crime of killing Shangguan Rue has now been put onto her head? It seems like her coming to participate in the hunting competition had already been calculated by her opponent. Hee Feng Lianing, you're sinister enough. You stealing my achievements, I won't speak of, but you actually dare to put your crime of killing someone onto my head. The bearded martial artist coldly snorted. The Emperor's secret imperial decree is proof. Come people, quickly seize him for me. Seeing that Hushi had been surrounded by the 7 or 8 gold core stage martial artists, and that she was already in the position of an easy target, Shen Qingchua felt extremely worried. Shen Qingchua anxiously said, "Xiao Shushu, how can they trap Shiyu and kill him? We should quickly go and help Shiyu." Shen Sun knit his brows and answered, "This is Jinling country's affair. We're visitors. If we recklessly get involved, bad things can happen. It would be better if we lay low and watch the situation before thinking of ways to help Shigongzi escape. If we lay low and watch, Shigongzi will be hurt by them." Shen Qingchua was on the verge of tears. "Xiao Shushu, if you have a heart of stone and don't wish to help, it's fine. I'll go help Shigongzi myself." After she said this, she ignored the crowd and recklessly charged over. Shen Sun helplessly watched on. He saw as Shen Qingchua neared the martial artists and was just about to start opposing them. He was left with no other alternative but to step forward and use his spiritual pressure to heavily say, "What's going on?" The several gold core stage martial artists were reduced to trembles by Shen Sen's voice that carried spiritual pressure. The surrounding guards were even more unable to stand it, and they recoiled a few steps back. When the bearded martial artist saw Shen Sun, his originally arrogant expression turned respectful and flattering. "Elder Shen, this subordinate didn't notice you here. This subordinate has alarmed you. I'm truly sorry." Shen Sen's expression remained indifferent and his tone remained light as he slowly said, "This Shiyu is related to our Qingxia sect, and even arrived with us. Why would he been stopped here by guards?" He's saying it respectfully. Luo Yingqi was both the Emperor's personal guard and the commanding officer of the Imperial Guards. But when he faced Shen Sun, Luo Yingqi didn't dare to act big. His voice carried great respect as he replying to Elder Shen, "It isn't us who's deliberately causing trouble for Shigongzi. Rather, it's because Shigongzi is suspected of killing the third prince, so the Emperor has ordered this subordinate to go apprehend her." Shen Sun narrowed his eyes. "What proof do you have that says Shigongzi killed the third prince?" The proof is in the Emperor's hands. This subordinate isn't clear on it. However, as far as this subordinate knows, this Shiyu has had issues with the third prince previously, and ever since then, they've harbored hard feelings for each other. Perhaps it's because of this reason that she killed our third prince in the sealed dragon domain, in order to vent her hatred. Before Shen Sun could respond, Shen Qingchua already yelled, her voice full of anger. Impossible, Shi Gongzi isn't that type of person. Moreover, your Jinling is too unreasonable if it places a crime on someone purely based off of guesswork. Shen Sun held on to the emotional Shen Qingchua, stopping her from talking, and unhurriedly laughed. Since there's no evidence, what reason do you have to seize someone? Wouldn't it be better if the leader went to get the evidence before arresting the person? Shiyu, let's leave. When Luo Yingqi saw that Shen Sun was just about to walk away with the person, he urgently said, Elder Shen, that's not possible. We're acting under imperial orders. We cannot allow for Shiyu to be taken away. Why would Shen Sun pay attention to him? He held on to Shiyu was just about to leave. Qingxia sect was one of the 4 largest sects on Miluo continent. They didn't even pay attention to Tiangang country's monarch, so why would they pay any mind to Jinling, this insignificant country? But before Shen Sun could step out, a man's gloomy voice rang out from behind him. Shen Sun, you're a grand elder of Qingxia sect. Could it be that you want to ignore what's right and shield an assassin? Shen Sun turned around, and when he saw the person behind him, his pupils slightly contracted. Feng Yunjing. Luli sect was in Songming country, and Qingxia sect was in Tiangang country. The 2 sects both minded their own business. However, regarding the matter with the ruler of Feng family, and the person who truly wielded power in Lulu sect, Shen Sun was very clear on it. At a young age he was already at nascent soul stage. Moreover, his personality was fiery and firm, and he had innumerable amounts of magic weapons on his hands. To provoke him and the Feng family would be like provoking a viper. It would be difficult to back out once you've done so. Behind Feng Yunjing was an exquisite, immortal-like woman wearing a white cotton skirt and a handsome youth. It was Feng Lianing and Ye Jinchen. Shen Sun frowned and said, Young Master Feng, what is the meaning of this? However, Feng Yunjing's burning gaze was currently resting on Hushi. His gaze was so intense that it made it hard for others to ignore it, even if they wished to. After not seeing her for a few months, he found that the girl had grown into an even more beautiful and moving person. Even though she was dressed in men's clothes and wore no jewelry, it was still impossible to hide her lovely features. Her skin was snow white, like porcelain, and there were no blemishes to be seen on it. Her phoenix eyes were colorful and clear, but in them there was a cold gleam. Even though she was in these circumstances, her eyes still held a calm and unflustered light. It felt as if she didn't feel a hint of fear or confusion. Feng Yunjing pursued his lips as he unconsciously entered a fantasy. That face appeared by his side, and held a weeping and begging expression. When he thought about this celestial snow-like, lofty, and proud person being ruined under him, with misty eyes and calling out his name, his eyes ignited with a burning fire. He suddenly clenched the hand laying limply by his side. He deeply sucked in a breath, forcibly trying to suppress the oncoming heat wave. But there was no need to hurry. Soon this person would become his own. Feng Yunjing's eyes swiveled over to Shen Sun as he faintly laughed. The evidence clearly shows that Shiyu killed the 3rd prince Shangguan Rue. Isn't Elder Shen worried that the reputation of Qingxia sect will be affected if you continue to shield him and obstruct the Imperial Guard? You're telling lies. Before Shen Sun could respond, Shen Qingchua angrily yelled out, Where's the proof? Just then we asked that Imperial Guard to bring out proof. How come he can't take it out? Moreover, even if you have proof, I'm certain that you framed Shiyu. Chor, don't be rude. In one motion, Shen Sun pulled his niece back. Feng Lianing, who was standing behind Feng Yunjing, cast a loathing glare in Hushi's direction before turning her head to face Shen Qingchua, with a soft smile painted on her face. Chua Mimi, you can know someone for a long time without knowing their true nature. You must not allow yourself to be tricked by this Shiyu's outward appearance. She stepped forward 2 steps. Her body moved like she was moving clouds and flowing water, giving off the appearance of an immortal. On her face, she wore a mild and affable smile that caused people to easily form a favorable impression upon first look. Standing in front of Shen Qingchua, Feng Lianing let out a sigh and said, Chua Mimi, you're the pearl in the palm of your grandfather's hand, so you haven't yet seen the ugly side of this world. Therefore, You don't know that this world has numerous repulsive people who are beasts hiding behind a human face. When I first met this Shiyu, I was also tricked by his outward appearance. I too thought that he was a modest gongzi. However, later on I learned that his heart was actually so shameless and ruthless. He actually tried to seduce my fiancé and repeatedly framed me. Chur Mimi, you're still young so you're gullible. But by the time you've been tricked by him, it'll already be too late. This is something I, Jie definitely doesn't wish to see happen to you. Feng Lianying's words were reasonable and deeply sentimental. One after another, the martial artists circling around Hushi all turned to look at her in disgust as they fell for Feng Lianying's words. Someone couldn't help but mutter on their breath. I was just saying how this man has such evildoer looks. As it turns out he's like a cunning fox, even going as far as to try and seduce other people's fiancés. He really is too shameless. Who is the fiancé that he seduced? You don't know this? Naturally it's His Majesty the King of Hell. You don't know, but before, there were rumors spread in Yanjing country that the King of Hell was behaving intimately with a man on the streets. Everyone thought that the King of Hell had a cut sleeve too. So it's actually His Majesty the King of Hell. If he's shameless, then we won't talk about it, but he actually dares to drag the King of Hell down with him. He's truly too vile. No wonder that even the Ice Lotus Fairy, who has such a good temper, would look down at him with so much loathing. When Feng Lianing heard everyone around her discussing, she felt immensely proud of herself. Turning around to look at Shin Qingchua again, the smile on her face became even kinder. Chener Mimi, my words now aren't for selfish reasons. I just hope that you won't be cheated by this person. I won't be cheated by others and Shi Gongzi won't trick me. Shin Qingchua snapped and couldn't help but loudly yell out. I remember you, Ice Lotus Fairy Feng Lianing. You're the shameless one. What qualifications do you have to speak of Shi Gongzi? Feng Lianying's face was painted with shock. But Shin Qingchua didn't stop there. I also entered into the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. You don't think that I don't know you exited the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, with no clothes on your body. I saw all of it. You're the one who doesn't want to save face. You provoked His Majesty the King of Hell, and now he doesn't even want you. You also actually want to frame Shi Gongzi. You're the one who's truly shameless here. One Jiejie, an older sister, but in this case, Feng Lianing is calling herself Jiejie and Shin Qingchua Mimi in order to make it appear that they're close/are friendly. 2 cut sleeve, a euphemism for being homosexual. Chapter 504 Meddling in Others' Affairs. Once those words were said, Feng Lianying's face switched from green to white in a flash. The martial artists crowding around them let out a roar of laughter when they heard what was revealed. Naturally, these martial artists had heard of what happened, but none of them took it seriously, thinking it was someone else who made up a story to frame the Ice Lotus Fairy. But now that they heard it directly from Shin Qingchua's mouth, they now believe the rumor 70 to 80%. Only because Shin Qingchua's face and voice still held the same innocent and shy charm of a child's. To everyone, it felt like Shin Qingchua would never speak lies just to slander someone. Elder Shin, are you allowing your niece to be a troublemaker in order to stall for time and protect Shiyu, that murderer? A deep voice sounded out, instantly suppressing everyone else's voices in the hall. When everyone heard Feng Yunjing coldly say those words, they immediately quieted down out of fear. Shen Sun sneered and didn't make any motions to back down. Young Master Feng keeps repeating how Shiyu is a murderer, but I've yet to see any evidence be taken out. I still say that you're framing someone. After saying so, Shen Sun turned his attention toward Hushi and asked, Shiyu, did you kill the third prince? Hushi unhesitatingly answered, no. Shen Sun peered deeper into her eyes and only saw that they were clear, but he did notice a flash of cold light flashing through them. She openly welcomed his gaze and didn't show any motions to shrink back or dodge it. Shen Sun soon let out a faint smile and clearly said, I trust you. Since you didn't do anything, I definitely won't allow others to brazenly accuse you. Once Shen Sun's words were heard, Feng Yunjing's face became incomparably gloomy. His expression toward Hushi grew even more grave. He didn't know how much charm this person had. First, it was in sealed dragon domain where she had Nangongyu and Gu Lufeng protecting her. Nowadays, at Breaking Spirit Mountain, she had Qing Xiasek's Shen family's people protecting her. He cast a cold glance at Shen Sun and gloomily said, "When did Shen family's people begin meddling in other people's businesses? We're in Jinling country. Furthermore, it was Jinling country's third prince who died. Qing Xiasek doing so is really exceeding their bounds. Are you not afraid of being laughed at by everyone else? So young Master Feng also knows it's Jinling country's matter." Shen Sun sarcastically shot back, refusing to yield even an inch. Since it was someone from Jinling country who died, what relation does it have to Feng family? Young Master Feng is being so overbearing to a foundation establishment youngster. It makes me wonder whether or not Feng family harbors bad intentions. The expression on Feng Yunjing's face darkened. H was stuck in a difficult situation. Shen family's power was equal to Feng family's. Feng family and Feng Yunjing were unwilling for the two families to fall out just for an insignificant Shiyu. He just didn't understand why the Grand Shen family would actually go head-to-head with Feng family for a single low-level foundation establishment stage martial artist. At this moment, Feng Lianing couldn't hold herself back anymore. Facing Hushi, she began to sternly reprimand her. "Shiyu, you're still acting so shameless? Clearly it's a sin you committed yourself. Yet you actually have the face to allow Shen family's people and Chuar Mimi to rush forward for you? If you still have some conscience, quickly admit to your wrongdoings. If not, when the evidence comes out and everyone knows you're a murderer, you'll greatly affect Qing Xiasek's reputation. Don't tell me you actually want this outcome?" Hushi, who had been silent all along, finally raised her head when she heard Feng Lianying's words. Facing her, she offered a smile that wasn't a smile and said, "Oh, who was it exactly who killed Shangguan Rue? I believe that Ice Lotus Fairy and young Master Feng are the two most familiar with that, no?" Without waiting for the Ice Lotus Fairy to refute, Hushi's voice turned cold and she slowly said, "Feng Lianing, didn't you say you had evidence in your hands? Please take out your evidence for everyone to see since you're so sure that I killed Shangguan Rue. I'm also curious. How exactly did I kill the third prince? You think I don't dare?" Feng Lianing shrieked. "Just wait until I bring the evidence out for everyone to see. That way, everyone can see your true colors." "Since it's like this," Shen Sun suddenly interrupted Feng Lianing and heavily said, "Wouldn't it be better if we let Shangguan Wenji, Jinling's emperor, come and conduct a public trial? What does Feng Lianing think?" Feng Yunjing's eyes turned gloomy. He turned to Hushi and slowly said, "Shiyu, you need to clearly think this through. If the public trial finds you guilty, you'll forever carry the crime of being a murderer. It would be impossible to have the status of a doctor on Miluo continent after that. If you obediently admit your crime now, perhaps I can plead leniency on your behalf and let you leave Jinling country and practice medicine and saving others elsewhere. It was common for martial artists to kill others, but as a doctor, if you gained the reputation of killing others with your medicine, then you would be spurned by most martial artists." Hushi sneered. "I don't need young Master Feng's fake kindness. I'm genuinely curious. How are you guys going to press such a crime on my head? This is something your Feng family is the best at. I don't know how. Fortunately, I can master it today." When Feng Yunjing heard her, his face instantly darkened and the little bit of tenderness left in his eyes instantly vanished and was replaced by coldness. He then coldly scoffed, "Since you want to court death, don't blame us." After warning her, he turned toward Shen Sun and faintly suggested, "Since it's going to be a public trial, how can just having Shen family and our Feng family be enough? We should call upon people of Qixing Palace, Moonwater sect's elders, and the representatives of other large sects here at the hunting competition. Everyone should come over and see the results." Seeing the steadiness and determination to win in Feng Yunjing's eyes, Shen Sun slightly frowned. Could it be that Feng family really had evidence on hand? If it was truly so, then if Shiyu was convicted in a public trial in front of the four big families, Shiyu would truly be unable to free himself, and Shen family would also be implicated. Shen Sun didn't have time to respond before Shen Qingchua loudly said, "If it's a public trial, then so be it." There isn't a shadow of fear in Shigongzi's body. As long as he hasn't done it, our Shin family will support Shigongzi to the end. Shin's son immediately felt a headache coming on, but all he could do was helplessly allow the trial to continue. The hunting competition was taking place in the afternoon, and right now, it was sure, between 9 to 11 a.m. Adding on to that fact was that all the martial artists partaking in the competition had already signed up. So there was more than enough time to conduct a public trial. In the temporary imperial residence's large hall, there were countless high-level martial artists sitting on either side. Jinling's emperor, Shangguanwenji, was currently sitting in the dragon throne. But at this moment, his forehead was dotted with cold sweat, and he was nervously shifted on the chair. He was definitely Jinling's emperor. In front of ordinary people, he was able to command the impressive aura that an emperor should have. But Miluo Continent's martial arts world had more strength than he did. In front of the aristocratic families and large sects, he was unable to find even the courage to speak a few words. Especially the fact that he was currently sitting in front of the biggest and most famous four sects of the martial arts world. On either side, there was the elders of those four sects sitting there. Each of the elders were at nascent soul stage. The first elder sitting to his left was Qingxia sect's Shinsen, and the first elder sitting to his right was Lulu sect's Feng Yunjing. The person sitting in the second seat on the left was Qixing Palace's elder Xia. The person sitting on the second seat on the right was Water Moon sect's elder Han. Behind these four nascent soul stage martial artists, there were also each sect's respective younger generations. Most of these people were at gold core stage, with a handful of them even being at meridian stage. And behind the sects were several representatives of small sects and families of different countries. Most of these people were at the summit of gold core stage. Naturally, apart from the sects and families, there were also other scattered martial artists who had high enough cultivation levels to be invited. In Jinling country, apart from the Hell King, His Highness Nangongyu, the person with the highest cultivation was merely at the summit of gold core stage. There wasn't even any martial artists at nascent soul stage. So when Shangguanwenji faced this group of people, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. But when he met Feng Yunjing's gaze, he steeled himself and faced Hushi, who was standing beneath him. Raising his voice, he questioned, "Brazen Shiyu, someone has accused you of killing my prince in sealed dragon domain. Do you recognize the claim?" Hushi's reply was concise and consisted of only two characters. "I don't recognize it." Shangguanwenji had originally expected to hear this youth defend himself for a long time. Yet who would have known that he waited such a long time for just two characters? Furthermore, the one accused didn't even seem to have the slightest indication to want to expand on their statement. He suddenly choked and couldn't get any words out for a long time. Hi. Shiyu, the evidence that you killed someone is already certain. Today, even if you don't recognize it, you can't escape punishment." Hushi faintly smiled, her expression like a mild cloud and light wind. "Since you say so, please take the evidence out. Don't blindly argue just because someone else said something." "That's enough." Shangguanwenji had been angered by Hushi to the point that his face flashed between purple and red. He was so caught up in his anger that he even forgot his fear toward Shin family. He waved his hand and ordered, "I'll let you die to understand. Someone come and have Zhenyu Gongzhu and the guards called over." Soon, a beautiful figure dressed in flowery clothes appeared. It was Zhenyu Gongzhu. Her cultivation was quite low, but right now, she was exactly in the prime of her youth. Her body was maturing into a seductive and well-developed woman. At this moment, she walked over with tears streaming down her cheeks. Her red eyes and nose were exposed for everyone to see, evoking feelings of pity from the crowd. Following behind her were a couple of unremarkable guards, most of whom were only at foundation establishment stage. Zhenyu Gongzhu walked up to Shangguanwenji and performed a proper ceremony before turning to Hushi. Abruptly, she angrily cried out, "How could you be so malicious, Shiyu? My third brother only had a few minor disputes with you. How could you actually murder him in sealed dragon domain? How pitiful of my third brother. His behavior was always so kind-hearted and modest, yet he actually died in such a way. Woo woo woo." When Shangguan Wenji was reminded of how his son died, bitterness also flashed across his face. He fiercely cast a glare at Hushi before saying to Zhenyu Gongzhu, "You're saying that you already had conflict with Rui? Zhenyu, you need not hide anything. Completely tell us everything that happened that day." With a weeping voice, Zhenyu Gongzhu slowly said, "That day, we originally wanted to go to Mingwang Manor to call on Yu Gij. Who would have imagined we would actually come across Shiyu at his doorway? At the time we didn't know who he was. But even though he was merely at Qi refining stage, his manner was so arrogant toward third brother. I couldn't bear it, and had a couple words with him. Who would have known he would grab onto Hell King's power and humiliate me? Though third brother is extremely patient, he couldn't overlook it as Shiyu's words put both he and I in an awkward position. If it weren't for third brother's kind character advising me not to use my princess status, I would have properly taught him a lesson that day. Now knowing that, even third brother's kindness didn't make him feel grateful. Unexpectedly, he even plotted to murder third brother in Sealed Dragon Domain. Woo woo woo. If I had known earlier, I would have had the guards capture this youngster. That way, third brother's life wouldn't have been harmed. After Princess Jinhua finished, those several guards immediately agreed with her words. She had taken the conflict between herself, Shangguan Rui, and Hushi and added oil and vinegar, to the tale. When Shangguan Wenji heard the princess, he immediately became angry and sternly said to Hushi, "Do you have anything to say, Shiyu?" Hushi sneered. "Everything has already been said by you guys, what else can I say?" "You dare say that my Huang'er and guards are lying?" Hushi indifferently replied, "More or less." Immediately, Shangguan Wenji loudly said, "In other words, from that time on, you harbored bad feelings for my son. So in Sealed Dragon Domain, you seized the chance and murdered him?" A laugh appeared on Hushi's face and she looked at Shangguan Wenji with the same gaze she would hold toward an idiot. "Your Majesty, how come I feel you've reversed the story?" Shangguan Jinhua said it herself. That day, the people who had been humiliated were herself and the third prince. What bad feelings do I have? You're talking nonsense. Hushi's words sparked anger in Shangguan Jinhua, causing her to jump forth and defend her words. "It's clearly you who became jealous after seeing His Highness Hell King and I's relationship is so good. You even stopped us from going in and meeting Yu Gij. Third brother defended me, so you also began hating him. Little sister, your brain is working fine, right?" Hushi couldn't help but start laughing. If I recall correctly, before I even arrived at Mingwang Manor that day, a certain two people had been obstructed by Butler Nan at the door, isn't that right? You said I resent your and His Highness Hell King's relationship? What am I jealous of? You guys were blocked outside. You wouldn't even be able to use the excuse of visiting a sick person in order to get in. Hushi's words were incredibly vulgar and frank, but when the martial artists heard her, they all started lowly laughing. Jinyua's face turned ashen, and she pointed a shaking finger at Hushi. However, for the longest time, the only word she could make out was, you. At this moment, Feng Lianing, who had been sitting beside Feng Yunjing, suddenly stood up and softly said, "Shigongzi, your cultivation is higher than Jinyua Mimi's. How can you speak so overbearingly toward her? Don't tell me that you only know how to bully weak women? Let alone to say, I've known Yu Gij for many years, he once mentioned me to you. You're nothing more than a lowly doctor's attendant in Mingwang Manor. How can your identity compare to Jinhua Gongzhu and the third princes? How could Mingwang Manor's butler Nan block the third prince and Gongzhu from entering but allow you?" As she was speaking, she wore a rebuking expression on her face. Lightly she said, "Even if you wish to show off slightly and stir up rumors, you shouldn't slander Mingwang Manor's butler in the process." 1 Zhenyu switched to Jinhua, 2 oil and vinegar. She's added extra details / exaggerated what actually happened. After receiving Feng Lianying's support, Shangguan Jinhua immediately gained confidence again, and even her words became harsher. "What Feng Jiejie said is right. You're nothing more than a lowly doctor's attendant. Why would third brother and I go bother with you? Your heart is narrow, so you hate us and plotted to murder third brother. What words do you have to say now?" Hushi indifferently replied. Oh, however you guys say it is however it is. I have nothing more to say. Since you've admitted to it, there's no need to continue this trial. Shangguan Wenji immediately waved his hand and loudly proclaimed, Come immediately arrest him for me. Hushi merely sneered. Is His Majesty's hearing poor? When did I admit I killed him? Don't tell me that disagreeing with someone means that they'll be a murderer? In that case, I heard that the Crown Prince once had an argument with Third Prince at the Imperial Court. Don't tell me that the Third Prince's death means that his Gij, the Crown Prince, is also under suspicion? Originally, the Crown Prince had been quietly sitting in the back, listening to this joke. But once he heard Hushi's words, his face turned unsightly. Shangguan Wenji was even more furious and his body began shaking from the anger. He hated that he couldn't immediately strangle this rude youngster to death. Feng Yunjing cast a cold glance at the dragon throne, and the emperor immediately cleared his head. Gently laughing, he said, Since you insist on going this way, don't blame me for being unsightly toward you. Come someone, bring the witnesses out. Once he said that, 2 gold core stage martial artists with scars on their faces were soon brought out. Once she laid eyes on these two, understanding filled Hushi's heart. These two were the 2 gold core stage guards that Shangguan Rue had brought with himself to 100 Herb Mist that day. Together with Shangguan Rue, they both contracted blood-intoxicated poison. After Shangguan Rue died, they each used a magic weapon to exchange for the detoxifying soup. She never thought they would turn into people who would come and testify against herself as a murderer. It really was interesting. When the 2 guards saw the sneer at the corner of Hushi's mouth, they both frantically avoided her gaze, not daring to look at her. At 100 Herb Mist that day, although Hushi required a high price, she was still considered to be their savior. Now they were going to bite the hand that fed them and testify against their savior in front of all these martial artists. Their conscience was certainly filled with much guilt. But when they thought of the large reward and beautiful future Feng family promised them, they clenched their teeth and forced their faces to remain calm. Shangguan Wenji looked at the 2 of them and loudly said, You 2 accompanied Rueer into Sealed Dragon Domain that day. Now, I'm asking you 2 to relay everything that happened in the secret territory. The 2 first performed the proper ceremony toward the emperor and the various sects in the crowd. Then they started talking. That day, we were in Sealed Dragon Domain's Greenwood realm looking for 100 Herb Mist. After we entered into 100 Herb Mist, we and Third Prince made the mistake of eating a poisonous plant, and we were nearly about to die. At this time, this Shiyu Gongzi appeared and said he was a doctor and could detoxify us. However, we had to each give up a precious magic weapon or medicine in order to receive treatment. One of the guards took a small silver bell out from his chest and said, This is a 5th-rank magic weapon passed down from generation to generation in my family. It's called a gold and silver dream spirit bell. This dream spirit bell was originally a pair. Its other half was given to Shiyu that day in order to get an antidote. Isn't that so, Shi Gongzi? Hushi nodded her head and smiled. That's right. Moreover, this dream spirit bell had long since been given to Gu Liufeng's subordinate, Mei Ru Yan. Chapter 509 Kill him. The guard's mouth hardened and he continued to say, Once we got the antidote, naturally we assumed it was real, so we completely swallowed it. At the beginning, we somewhat improved. But we never thought that bad symptoms would soon show up. The Third Prince had the worst end of the stick. After swallowing the antidote, a long time passed before his entire body unexpectedly burst open, and he turned into a puddle of watery blood. The first few claims the guard laid down already caused everyone to go into an uproar, but his final sentence caused everyone to dissolve into a state of complete shock. Moreover, the Third Prince wasn't the only one to die there. The guard turned around to look at the distant crowd and heavily said, On the day, many of the martial artists from the large sects also ate Shi Gongzi's antidote and died. I only personally know that Nailan family's Nailan Yanming alongside Morong family's Morong Zhangfeng and Morong Hai died. We originally had a hard time escaping the fate of turning into watery blood, but fortunately, the Ice Lotus Fairy and the Feng family's people hurried over. In this pressing time, they quickly treated us, saving our lives. Once the guard's words were out, everyone present immediately flared up. They never thought that this little foundation establishment stage martial artist would be able to use poison and kill so many people. Not only was Jinling country's third prince among one of the victims, but so were many influential families' elders. Great distress and anger flooded Feng Lianying's face as she looked at Hushi. With a heavy voice she said, "Shi Gongzi, on that day when we ran into each other at Watermoon Realm, didn't I advise you? You don't have any of the skills of a doctor. Even if you have a few minor methods, you shouldn't diagnose illnesses and you definitely shouldn't carelessly prescribe medicine. Who would have thought that not only did you not listen, but you also harmed so many people in the process? And when I rushed to 100 Herb Mist, you actually attempted to block me, stating that your way of healing was the right way. If you weren't so selfish, you wouldn't have killed the third prince and so many other innocent people." By now, Feng Lianying's eyes had already turned red. "Shi Gongzi, you're also a doctor. Don't you know that every life is precious? That each sick person has their own family and friends? If their friends and family knew they died by your hands, they would feel extremely sad and hurt. I'm just regretful that I didn't arrive earlier and wasn't firm enough. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hurt so many lives." The hall's atmosphere had been very tense since the beginning. Now, after Feng Lianying's perfect performance, everyone's emotions were nearly at the bursting point. Especially for those that were a part of sects and influential families that sent their members to the sealed dragon domain. They all fixed their angered gazes at Hushi, practically burning a hole through her. "I never thought that this youth who seems to put on airs would actually turn out to be so malicious. This type of person simply doesn't deserve to live in this world anymore." "Exactly. How come you guys didn't just directly kill this person on the spot that day? Surprisingly, you actually let him run around for so long. The Ice Lotus Fairy is truly too kind-hearted. My Xianhe sect's people entered sealed dragon domain and never returned. They were most likely harmed by him. Obviously he doesn't even have a doctor's rank, yet he actually dares to pretend and detoxify others. Now that he's harmed others' lives, don't tell me that a debt of blood can't be paid in blood? Such an utterly heartless person should be thrown into a magic beast pit and die without a burial place. Kill him. Kill him. Let's take revenge for those who've died under this quack." Chapter 510. Everyone's angry. Hard to offend. Everyone's angry shouts soon starting filling the large hall. Hushi merely coldly looked on but didn't speak. She looked like she was merely an observer that had nothing to do with the situation. Suddenly, a slender youth squeezed out from the crowd. He stared Hushi down with a face full of killing intent. "I didn't expect that my Nalan family's elder was actually killed by you. What hatred do you have with my Nalan family for you to so maliciously kill him?" This youth seemed to be around the same age as Nalan Hushi. His appearance was elegant, and he even seemed to hold some resemblance to Nalan Jingza. Anjingling country's Prince Shangguanqi, who had been silently standing in the crowd all along, suddenly slowly walked up to this youth's side. He patted his shoulder and tried placating him. "Ziyun, you can feel assured. Father Emperor will definitely get revenge for third brother and your Nalan family." Ziyun. Nalan Ziyun? It was the original Nalan Hushi's twin, younger brother. Hushi faced the youth, whose face really resembled Nalan Jingza's, and a gloomy light flashed through her eyes. The crown prince faintly looked around and sneered. "This brute who completely lacks humanity was let off by us once. But everyone here won't let him off a second time. Isn't that right?" Immediately someone loudly agreed. "The crown prince is right, such a person can't be let off. Take his life for murdering someone. Take his life for murdering someone." Feng Yunjing, who had been silently sitting to the side the entire time, looked at the turbulent circumstances in the hall, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. This public trial had been suggested by Shen Sun himself, and now it had escalated to this degree. Even if the Shen family was powerful, it was hard to offend everyone when they were angry. They definitely wouldn't protect some insignificant martial artist who was just at foundation establishment stage if it was at the cost of their Qingxia sect's reputation. Doing so would turn them into the public's enemy. And Shiyu was destined to become an assassin. He would only be able to plead for asylum. There There wouldn't be another alternative. Feng Yunjing's gaze landed on Shen Sun, who was sitting opposite to him, and he faintly smiled. Elder Shen, this public trial was first brought up by you. Now all the evidence has been laid out and the trial's outcome has been determined. What other words does Elder Shen have to say now? Shen Sun's face also became extremely unsightly. He always felt this whole affair was odd, but now, everything was pointing toward Shiyu. If he continued to protect Shiyu, he was afraid that Qingxia sect would be pulled into the waters. Although Shen Sun didn't speak, Shen Qingchua anxiously blurted out everything in her heart. Your so-called evidence is all one-sided. You guys have so many people while Shiyu is all alone. He definitely can't outspeak you guys. If you guys are able to, then bring out decisive evidence. When Feng Lianing saw that they had gotten to this step and Shen Qingchua was still defending him, her gaze toward Hushi became filled with even more hatred. This shameless youth only goes around fooling around with people. Even if he seduced Yu Gij, it's whatever. Now he actually was able to seduce Qingxia sect's most beloved person. What was this slut worth? Feng Lianing deeply breathed in before painting on her most tender and friendly expression. She faced Shen Qingchua and said, Chuer Mimi, the facts are all laid out here. You don't need to believe such lies anymore. Without a second thought, Shen Qingchua immediately replied, because Shi Gongzi is a good person, he saved my life. Shen Qingchua was still young and her mind was pure. She completely missed the fact that Feng Lianing was encouraging her to talk. Sure enough, after Feng Lianing heard her words, she had an extremely astonished expression on her face. Oh, so Chuer Mimi means that because Shi Gongzi saved you, him killing many other people doesn't have any relation? Shen Qingchua was stunned and was suddenly tongue-tied. Shen Sen's face turned cold and he stood up. Young Miss Feng, I advise you to be cautious with your words. What, is Elder Shen preparing to threaten us now? Or is it that Shen family has decided to shield a murderer? Feng Yunjing immediately interrupted Shen Sun and mockingly asked, if Elder Shen was prepared to shield Shiyu from the beginning, regardless of any sins he committed, what was the point of suggesting a public trial? Now that the truth has come out, could it be that Elder Shen wants to go back on his words? Feng Yunjing's words immediately caused the martial artists to place their blame on Shen family's shoulders. Even the other two influential families, who had originally just been there to watch the show, also began placing accusations against the Shen family. Qixing Palace's Elder Xia rubbed his long beard and meaningfully said, Elder Shen, Laofu has always heard that Shen family is just and fair. You can't ruin Shen family's millennia-long clean reputation for some little monster. If clan head Shen were here, he would make the proper decision. Shueyu sect's Elder Han had a fiery temper. Adding on to this was that the sect had lost quite a few people in Sealed Dragon Domain, and hadn't gained much rewards this time. So at this moment, he hated Shiyu, this possible murderer, to her very bones. His cold gaze landed on Shen Sun. What Elder Xia said was right. If we allowed this heartless murderer to live, wouldn't the entire Miluo continent be in trouble? Elder Shen protecting this person so vigilantly can't help but cause people to harbor doubts about Qingxia sect's intentions. When other families and sects saw 3 of the 4 largest sects raising their dissatisfaction, they also started to point blame at Shen family. They no longer looked at Shen Sun with gazes of respect. Instead, their eyes were filled with anger and questions. Feng Yunjing watched the scene in front of him, and the happy expression in his eyes grew more and more intense as time passed. His gaze couldn't help but land on Hushi's body. He saw his eyelashes faintly turn down, casting a faint shadow on his snow-white skin. His body was straight, making him appear weak and beautiful. This person would soon be his. Feng Yunjing suddenly turned to Hushi and using his spiritual power, he secretly said to her, Shiyu, if you agree to be mine in the future, I'll absolve you of all your guilt. So you don't become the monster everyone in Miluo continent wants to beat. When Hushi first heard Feng Yunjing, she became distracted. She turned around to Feng Yunjing and faced him with a burning gaze filled with a greedy light. Very quickly, her mouth turned into a ridiculing smile and her red lips noiselessly spit out 2 characters. Keep dreaming. Feng Yunjing's cold expression twisted and he heaved a deep breath. An eerie chilliness flashed across his eyes. Do you have any other words to say, Elder Shen? Shen Sun wrinkled his brows and faced Hushi, asking her, Shiyu, do you have anything to say? Hushi softly shook her head. No. Shangguan Wenji immediately slapped the dragon throne and sternly said, since the evidence has been proven true, come people, arrest Shiyu. Slow down. Hushi slowly opened her mouth, interrupting Shangguan Wenji's order. Shangguan Wenji grimly laughed. Didn't you just say you didn't have anything left to say? Now that death is near, you want to argue? A sly smile crept around the corners of Hishi's mouth. Indeed, I have nothing to say. However, I didn't say that there wasn't any evidence for you to have a look at. As soon as the words came out, everyone in the hall looked at each other in surprise. They were wondering what had she got up her sleeve? Seeing Hishi's expression, Feng Yunjing instinctively felt a bit of uneasiness. He asked the guards who came over deeply, why are you still dazed? Do you really slow down just because he asked you to? Those guards finally came to their senses. They were about to rush towards Hishi. However, a light golden fire lit up out of a sudden. Immediately, a playing image emerged in the void area located in the center of the hall. As soon as this image appeared, the people who knew about it exclaimed suddenly, I know it. It's fixing charm. It can record scenes which the eyes see into the charm. This is a very rare charm. The record time gets longer as the level gets higher. A medicinal field was currently played in the jade slip. There were high-level spiritual plants growing in the medicinal field. A group of martial artists were rushing towards the medicinal field frenziedly, picking and devouring the plants desperately. Shangguan Rui and the two testifying guards were three of the many who were rushing in. Feng Lianying's face turned pale immediately when she saw the image in front of her and heard the discussion of the surrounding people. She rushed over almost instinctively, trying to snatch the half-burnt charm from Hishi. However, she was quickly stopped by Shen Sun. What's wrong with you, Miss Feng? Do you feel unwell? Even if you feel unwell, you don't have to throw yourself at young Master Shi. Shen Sun was pressed hard by Feng Yunjing and members of every major family. He was very furious but had nowhere to let his anger out. Now that he saw Hishi took this thing out, it was clear that the situation took a favorable turn. How could he give the Feng family a chance to interrupt Hishi? Or could it be that the evidence in Shiyu's hand is unfavorable to Miss Feng? So Miss Feng wanted to rush over to destroy it. Hishi smiled faintly after hearing that. She took out a stack of identical charm from her arms and said slowly, Rest assured, Elder Shen. Even if Miss Feng accidentally destroyed this charm, I still have a dozen of them with me. The images in them were copied from the same fixing charm. The content is guaranteed to be exactly the same, and without any difference. If you are curious, you can take the charm from me later and watch it slowly yourself. As soon as Hishi said this, Feng Lianying screamed hysterically, This is fake. It's fake. She deliberately forged it as she wants to frame me. Shen Qingchua made a pei sound and said indignantly, It has just begun to play. You have already claimed that it is fake when no one knows what will happen next. Could you be a clairvoyant? I think you must be having a guilty conscience. Also, how have I never heard that things carved in the fixing charm can be forged? I would like to have the Feng family forged a fake one for me. Shen Qingchua's anger was nothing less than Shen Sen's. She was also worried about Hishi. She was extremely disgusted by this pretentious woman who slandered Shiyu. She really didn't know why there were so many senior brothers in the faction admired her like a goddess. She was obviously an affected woman who was extremely feigned all over. Looking at her losing herself now, Shen Qingchua guessed that they must have been working together to slander Shiyu. She immediately became excited. Feng Yunjing's expression was not much better than Feng Lianying's. He had never expected that. Clearly, it was practically certain, but Shiyu could still turn the tables. He clearly noticed that no one within the group of Shiyu and Nangongyu was using fixing charm that day in the 100 Herb Mist, let alone that he knew no one in the Hell King Manor was good at drawing this special charm. Who knows, at such a critical moment today, Shiyu could come up with a fixing charm. Feng Yunjing gnashed his teeth. His gaze towards He immediately became hotter and hotter. He sure had underestimated her. However, he became more and more obsessed with this person because he couldn't successfully pursue her. At this point in time, the images in the fixing charm had been played for a while. The crowd was too frightened to even say a word when they saw the scene of people getting poisoned. The face full of blood blisters and black liquid. The scene of body decaying bit by bit. They were really terrifying. The timid Shen Qingchua had already hidden behind Shen Senator. She covered her eyes and shivered in fear. She only dared to peek from time to time. Everyone then saw Feng Lianying was the one who first stepped forward to offer help instead of Shiyu. This was different from the narration of the two guards. Initially, Shangguan Rui who consumed Feng Lianying's medicinal pill got better. However, he then exploded to death without warning, and turned into a pool of blood. Although there was no silhouette in this scene, it was extremely scary in everyone's eyes. There were some people couldn't help but exclaimed, It's the Ice Lotus Fairy who killed the third price. Seeing this scene, Shangguan Wenji who was sitting on the Emperor's throne clenched his fist tightly. There were creaks at his joint areas. However, he still couldn't show his hatred towards the Feng family and Feng Lianying. He could only maintain his apparent calm. However, Shangguan Jinyue who saw this scene was stupefied. She kept yelling, Impossible! Impossible! The two guards were even more embarrassed and horrified. Their bodies curled up on the floor and shivered in fear. They felt regretful when thinking about their desperate and terrifying future. The image was still playing. Eventually, everyone saw that she was the one who really saved everyone. It was indeed the young man who was accused of being a ruthless killer by them. His medicinal methods were simply fantastic. He cured dying patients with just a bowl of inconspicuous black medicinal liquid. On the other hand, Feng Lianying was desperately looking for someone to test out her pills, even though she knew that her medicine was useless. Seeing that these people who still had a chance of surviving became Feng Lianying's prey out of her selfishness, everyone in the hall had indignant expressions. However, compared with the accusations against He just now, they became furious yet afraid to speak when facing Feng Lianying and the strong Feng family. They just secretly looked at the so-called Ice Lotus Fairy with contemptuous and angry gazes. When these people thought about the news of the Ice Lotus Fairy rescued countless martial artists in the sealed dragon territory, spreading in the streets and lanes, they felt extremely ironic. Even the beautiful face of Feng Lianying had become disgusting. The charm slowly burned out, and the image in front of them slowly disappeared. Just when everyone thought that the contents in the fixing charm had finished playing, a light suddenly lit up above the charm. Everyone immediately saw that Feng Lianying's undressed body appeared in front of many martial artists at the foot of Tsang Mountain outside of the sealed dragon territory. The delicate skin, the exquisite body and the private parts which appeared indistinctly were uninterruptedly seen. Ah! Feng Lianying screamed. Her eyes turned white and her body fell back weakly. Eventually Nie Jinshan held her in his arms. Despite their efforts to suppress it, the people in the hall couldn't help but discuss softly in high spirits. This final bonus scene was thrice as good as the images of the 100 herb mist just now. No one expected the Ice Lotus Fairy who seemed pure, noble and unapproachable was such a debauched woman in private. Tut, it was really unexpected. Although the young and innocent Shen Qingchua had seen this scene earlier on, she had only slightly seen what was happening as it was far away after all. When she saw such an explicit scene at such close range, she suddenly screamed in shock and covered her eyes. She was also shouting with her clear voice, "Shameless! People in the Feng family are really shameless." She also held the hands of his uncle and other senior brothers as she spoke. She grumbled, "All of you are not allowed to look at it too. Beware that you might get sty after looking at it." The senior and junior brothers from Qingxiao sect were all looking at her with pampers. They felt exalted at the same time. They all remembered how overbearing the Feng family and other sects were against them. The Qingxiao sect was the strongest in terms of comprehensive strength amongst the 4 largest sects. Its disciples had always had strict self-discipline and possessed fine untarnished reputation. It had never faced such grievance. Fortunately, This honest young master, she feared no gossip and finally proved his innocence. This slap in the face was believed to cause the Feng family and Liuli sect unable to recover for a few months' time. Hee, this felt so refreshing. She smiled lightly and flicked the remaining charm ash off her hands. She said clearly, so? There should be nothing that I'm concerned with now. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. She left calmly right when she was done speaking without even looking at the reaction of the people that were present. Shangguan Wenji, who sat on the emperor's throne, was panic-stricken. Feng Yunjing had a gloomy expression. Feng Lianying was semi-conscious. Those guards looked at one another, and none of them dared to interfere. When the martial artists who were originally surrounding the hall saw this teenager, who was just at the foundation establishment stage approaching slowly, they backed up as thought they were bewitched. She suddenly stopped when she was passing by His Highness the Crown Prince and Nalan Ziyun. She glanced at Nalan Ziyun with a faint smile and her gaze finally fell on the Crown Prince. She curled the corner of her lips up and said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, don't forget what you have just said. To uphold justice for the deceased. After all, one of them is your biological brother who came from the same mother as you. Or was it that you intend to let the culprit who killed your brother off if it was a different murderer?" The Crown Prince's face turned pale when he heard her words. Nalan Ziyun yelled softly, "How dare you? What do you think you are? How can you comment on whatever decision His Highness the Crown Prince is going to make? I also saw in the images that you clearly have the ability to cure the disease and save them, but you made the martial artists exchange it with magic weapons and medicinal pills. Is this the integrity of a doctor? Even if you are not a murderer, you don't deserve to be called a doctor." She curled the corner of the lips up even more, and her gaze slowly swept from his head to his feet. She finally sneered after quite a long time. "Oh, is a doctor who goes back on his words considered a good doctor? A doctor like Nalan Jingza who declined the marriage because he couldn't cure someone's muscle and tendon fracture." Nalan Ziyun was stunned by her words. His expression was not well, and he was speechless for quite a long time. She smiled faintly. "Nalan Ziyun, I have kept it in my mind." Having said that, she quickly walked out of the hall without stopping. Shin Qingchua was not willing to be apart from He. She grabbed Shinsun to catch up with He when she saw He leaving. When Shinsun passed by Feng Yunjing, he couldn't help but smile gently. "Young Master Feng, your complexion seems bad. Is there any problem with your body? I remember young Master Feng has just said that Shen family's reputation will be dragged through the mud for shielding a murderer. I'm wondering how would Feng family handle a murderer who has killed numerous people? Young Master Feng better not disappoint everyone." After saying these words, Shensun got into a great mood. He quickly walked out of the hall following the grab of his little niece. Regardless of how the Feng family is going to handle Feng Lianying, in the end, the Feng family has lost all their faces this time. Particularly in front of every major sect and family, they may not be able to gain any ground for a long time. This boy Shiyu is really wicked. He obviously possessed such important evidence, but he only took it out at the end after watching their well-rehearsed performance for a long time. That was quite a slap in the face. People in the Feng family may still feel the pain in their faces whenever they see a fixing charm in the future. Aha. She walked out of the hall, but she wasn't smiling too much. It was because she knew that she would be unlikely to escape the consequence of paying with her own life if she was the murderer of Shangguan Rue. However, if the murderer of Shangguan Rue was Feng Lianying, she would lose some faces and be condemned by the public at most. Essentially, she would not be punished too heavily. This was Miluo continent, a world where the fittest survived and strength determined everything. The so-called axioms and justice were written by the strong. As long as you were not strong enough, you only deserved to be bullied by others. Fortunately, she received a talisman from that middle-aged man this time before coming to the big hunting match. The middle-aged man was named Jiang Huai. He was the man whose wife and son were killed by Feng Lianying in the 100 Herb Mist. Their generations were good at drawing special runes, including the talisman and fixing charm. Jiang Huai had been turning on the recording function of the fixing charm since he entered the Sealed Dragon Territory's secret territory. His initial intention was to allow his son to witness this adventure in the future and learn from it. Unexpectedly, it had now become the evidence to prove Hexi's innocence. Jiang Huai was currently in Haoyue Kingdom, and he coincidentally heard the news of Feng Lianying is curing diseases and saving people in the secret territory. He already hated Feng Lianying to his core, even more so now that he saw her shamelessly taking credits for someone else's works. Therefore, he communicated with Hexi through a talisman. He told her that he possessed the fixing charm that could expose Feng Lianying's conspiracy, and asked if Hexi wanted to put it out immediately. However, Hexi stopped him and let Shisen widely spread the merit of Feng Lianying in Yanjing City instead. She also asked Jiang Huai to send the fixing charm over to herself through the black market. She wanted Feng Lianying to be held high before falling down heavily. Otherwise, how could this shameless woman be hurt and frightened from the fall? Unfortunately, even if Feng Lianying's reputation got any worse, as long as she is still the daughter of the Feng family, it is impossible to stop her from reviving. She would also not let me off so kind-heartedly. Soon it was the afternoon. The opening ceremony of the big hunting match was held routinely. It was actually a very simple opening ceremony. It was a characterless banquet with songs and dances. However, Hexi, who should have been unknown to the public, had become the focus of attention in this banquet. Not only because of her reversal in the hall, or her close relationship with the Qingxia sect made them admired her, but also because of the medical skills and methods displayed by the teenager in the images. Although this young man named Xiyu had yet to reach the doctor rank, it would be easy for her to get the title of a fourth-rank doctor if she wanted to. However, there were some people who actually recognized that Xiyu was exactly the young master that appeared in Shengde Hall. Many martial artists believed that there must be a grandmaster-level pill refiner behind Xiyu when they thought of the best quality pills sold by Shengde Hall, and his legendary skills in the images. This suspicion turned into shock when they saw General Ouyang walking towards Hexi and greet her with a toast. Everyone knew that the only son of Ouyang Zhixiong, Ouyang Haoshuan's muscles and tendons were once all fractured. He lay in bed for 2 years. Dr. Naylan and the elders of the Doctors' Association were all powerless to do anything. But just a while ago, Ouyang Haoshuan was suddenly healed by someone. It was rumored that the healer was a young man with a naive appearance. In this case, the young man who healed Ouyang Haoshuan's fractured muscles and tendons was actually this person in front of them, Xiyu. How superb did Xiyu's medical skills have to be? Ouyang Zhixiong said to Hexi guiltfully. Genius Dr. Shi, I really didn't know that was the way they would treat you. If I were there. Please don't mind, General Ouyang. Hexi took a sip of wine and smiled lightly. The Feng family already knew my identity and my relationship with the Ouyang family, so they would naturally send you away before doing such things. This matter has nothing to do with you even if you were there. Not only you wouldn't be able to help, you would offend the Feng family for no reason. Moreover, I have come out intact anyways. Ouyang Zhixiong breathed a sigh of relief. He immediately said gratefully, the Ouyang family will never forget that genius doctor Shi has saved my son's life. Haoshuan will be participating in this big hunting match too. If you have any concerns, you can contact Haoshuan with the Ouyang family's unique method, and let him help you. Although the big hunting match would have the martial artists of the Foundation Establishment Stage, Meridian Stage and Gold Core Stage jointly participate, these martial artists of the 3 ranks would be placed in different areas when being transmitted in. After all, if the Foundation Establishment Stage martial artists were let to face the rank 5 magical beast, wouldn't it be equivalent to letting them face death? In addition, although the big hunting match did not prohibit snatching between martial artists, the conventional rules were: high-rank martial artists must not attack low-rank martial artists. No killing in the big hunting match or one would be hunted down by the 4 major families across the continent. Hexi accepted the black stone handed over by Ouyang Zhixiong. She nodded smilingly and put it into her space. Even if she entered the Breaking Spirit Mountain, she would definitely not seek help from Ouyang Haoshuan. However, Hexi decided to accept General Ouyang's kindness at the sight of his guilty expression. Meanwhile, Ouyang Haoshuan, who had finished socializing, also came over. He wore moon-white brocade robes and his hair was bound by jade crest. He looked handsome. The obscure dark complexion from that day when he was in bed had disappeared from his face. Instead, he appeared to be dashing and spirited, which caused numerous women who were present to lock their eyes on him. However, she knew that Ouyang Haoshuan had completely changed his disposition after experiencing major changes when she saw his eyes. Although he was smiling, his smile was never fully genuine. He was modest and respectful while socializing with other martial artists, but he always kept his distance from others. Only when Ouyang Jixiong called him, his eyes were then filled with sincere warmth. Haoshuan, I have given the traction stone to genius Dr. Shi. If he faced any difficulties in the big hunting match, you must go and help her. Ouyang Haoshuan looked at He Shi. His careless expression had become full of gratitude. His gaze was sincere and his voice was as serious as though he was taking an oath. The life-saving grace of genius Dr. Shi, Haoshuan will dare not forget. Please call me if you have any request in the big hunting match. Before He Shi could answer, she suddenly heard Shen Qingchua's anxious voice. Young Master Shi, I can await your call anytime too. It was unknown when this little girl approached her. She handed a piece of charm paper over with a blushed face. Young Master Shi, this is the charm commonly used by the Qingxia sect for communication. When you enter, you could look for me anytime if there's any problem. I have a cultivation base of the Meridian stage. Maybe I could help you. Even if my cultivation base is insufficient, there are a lot of experts in the Qingxia sect. Young Master Shi, you don't have to ask for help from others. As she spoke, she glanced at Ouyang Haoshuan with hostility. This person is so nasty as he actually gets to please young Master Shi before her. This makes her act of giving out charm seems like a belated effort. Ouyang Haoshuan took a sip of the spirit wine with a faint smile and didn't speak. Shen Qingchua was getting angry as she saw his expression of despising her. Just when she was about to continue speaking, her head was suddenly patted heavily by someone. She heard her uncle, Shen Sen's voice with a mocking tone. Little Chuer, are you thinking of helping young Master Shi out? I think it would be good enough if you don't do more harm than good. Who was the one who needed help in the sealed dragon domain? Don't you aggravate and trouble young Master Shi, or he would have to be distracted to take care of you. Uncle. Shen Qingchua flushed with anger. She looked at He Shi with shame and embarrassingly. Her tears were almost falling. I cultivate every day effortfully and I'm much better than I was. Shen Sun teased his niece until she almost cried. However, he didn't worry at all. He instead laughed conscientiously. He Shi saw that Shen Qingchua was terribly embarrassed. Her smiley face was as flushed as a ripe apple. He Shi reached and accepted the charm from her. Her voice was faint but it had a strange soothing power. Thank you for your kindness, Miss Shen. I'm keeping this charm and I will contact you if necessary. Shen Qingchua was wild with joy when she heard it. Her small blushed face which was hanging low nodded heavily. Shen Sun rubbed his niece's head gently, causing a protest from Shen Qingchua. He then said to He Shi, you have to be careful this time. I'm afraid the people in the Feng family are going to harm you. But, he suddenly switched the conversation. He looked at He Shi with admiration and confidence. However, don't you worry too much. The Breaking Spirit Mountain is separated by strong arrays and restriction barriers. High-rank martial artists and low-rank martial artists will be sent to different areas respectively. Low-rank martial artists can cross the restriction barriers to challenge the high-rank magical beast areas. However, the strengths of high-rank martial artists will be greatly weakened by the array once they cross the restriction barrier into the low-rank magical beast areas. They can't utilize 1/10 of their normal cultivation base. I can see that although you are only in the foundation establishment stage, your cultivation methods and experience are incomparable by ordinary martial artists. I believe that you will be able to find a way out even if the Feng family lets hundreds of foundation establishment stage martial artists to attack you in the low-rank magical beast areas. He Shi suddenly came into realization that there were such arrays and restriction barriers at the highest peak of the Breaking Spirit Mountain. She wasn't very clear about that. In this case, even if Ouyang Haoshuan wanted to come to her, his cultivation base would certainly be weakened. Ouyang Haoshuan saw she was looking at him. He smiled and said, "Genius Dr. Shi, don't worry. The Ouyang family has a secret method handed down in the family from generation to generation. It can break all the restrictions and rules for a short period of time, and allows us to fully utilize our strengths. Moreover, even if the cultivation base is weakened, it would be better for both of us to face the enemy rather than you alone, if you faced any danger." "That's right. That's right," Shin Qingchua said immediately. Young Master Shi, don't listen to my uncle. If there were people besieging you, you must burn the charm to call me over. I will bring along a lot of senior and junior brothers sisters. If any scoundrel dare to besiege you, I will beat them until they kneel for mercy." At the sight of the sincere expressions of Ouyang Haoshuan and Shin Qingchua, she nodded while she felt a little warmth in her heart. Shin Sun sighed resignedly and said, "It's accurate to say that a grown girl couldn't be kept at home. When she needed me back in the days, she would keep calling for my name by my side. Now that she has, young Master Shi, whatever said by uncle is wrong." "Uncle?" Shin Qingchua stomped her feet and grumbled. Shin Sun laughed for a while, and then looked at Shi solemnly. "Shiyu, I keep feeling that the Feng family will not let you off easily now that they have been put at such great disadvantage. There will be many inconveniences for me to take action in the Breaking Spirit Mountain, as I have been assigned tasks. So, even if you could deal with rank 4 magical beast, I suggest you better not leave the rank 3 magical beast area. This is to avoid any opportunity that allows them to attack you. As soon as you come out, the Qingxia sect can keep you safe." Shi nodded. "Thank you, Elder Shen." After Shin Sun gave a briefing, he was quickly pulled away by martial artists from other sects for social activities. As the person in charge of the safety of the big hunting match, Ouyang Zhixiong had a lot of work to do. He also said his goodbye and left with Ouyang Haoshuan. The two passed through the crowd. As they were about to reach the entrance of the hall, they passed by an inconspicuous man who was dressed in white. Suddenly, the man who was dressed in white stopped and looked towards the figure of the Ouyang father and son with surprise and excitement. He was then lost in his thoughts. Shen Qingchua and her several senior and junior brothers gathered around Shi, continuing the topic that was left off in the morning. Suddenly, a group of men in Qixing Palace's clothes approached them. Most of these Qixing Palace's disciples were only 17 to 18 years old, but their cultivation bases were generally meridian stage. There were several who were in foundation establishment stage, but they had all reached the summit of the foundation establishment stage. They were led by an 18 or 19-year-old teenager with a handsome face and very tall figure. His expression had an obvious superiority, as if he looked down on everyone. What surprised Shi was that there were the Crown Prince and Naylan Ziyun amongst these people. When Shin Qingchua saw the people who were approaching, her small face immediately showed unconcealed hatred. "What are you doing here? The hall is so big, won't you go elsewhere? You're not welcome here." The leading teenager seemed to know Shin Qingchua's character. He didn't get angry when he heard her words, but instead his gaze towards her was filled with affections. He straightened his gorgeous brocade robes that were embroidered with dark gold threads, and looked at Shi's hand-woven coarse clothes contemptuously. He smiled at Shin Qingchua. "Sister Chuor, I know you're unhappy about what my grandfather said in the public trial, but my grandfather was well-intentioned. He was afraid that you were deceived by someone with questionable origin, and damaged the centenary reputation of the Shen family." As he said, he glanced at Shi coldly and said disdainfully, "He's just a fellow at the foundation establishment stage. Sister Chuor, you're the beloved daughter of the entire Qingxia sect. How can such a person deserve you? Why become enemies with the Feng family for a person of little significance, and open a can of worms? Xiaoyi Chen, speak with some respect. What do you mean by a fellow at the foundation establishment stage? Haven't you just been promoted to the meridian stage?" Shin Qingchua's pretty face flushed. Her slightly trembled voice showed how angry she was. "What are you so proud of? Don't you think I don't know that you were able to be promoted to the meridian stage only because you took a lot of medicinal pills? Even though young master she is only at the foundation establishment stage, he fully relies on his own efforts. He's not worse than you cowards who only depend on your sect. She then grabbed Hishi's sleeve and said hatefully, "Young master she, let's go. Ignore them." Shen Qingchua's words made Xia Yichen feel very embarrassed. At the sight of Shen Qingchua holding Hishi's hands, he suddenly became angry. His gaze towards Hishi was as though he wanted to tear Hishi into shreds. This stupid fellow who doesn't belong to any sects and has a low cultivation base. What else does he have besides his face? Why does he deserve to be favored by Chuer? He stepped forwards and stood barring the way of Hishi. He said sneeringly, "Young master she, right?" Hishi raised an eyebrow. "Is there anything?" This group of people in front of Hishi was a group of spoiled brats to her. She really had no interest in arguing with them. Xia Yichen rolled his eyeballs and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said calmly with a smile, "This is what it is. This is my second senior brother Shang Guanqi and my junior brother Nalan Ziyun. They want to apologize to you about what just happened." Before Hishi could answer, Shang Guanqi, who was standing behind Xia Yichen, had stepped forward and said while making a bow with hands folded in front, "Young master she, I didn't know the truth and regarded you as the murderer of my third younger brother. Please forgive me for having offended you." Having said that, he suddenly switched the conversation. He showed a meaningfully expression. It wasn't expected that young master she has such important evidence. However, since you have evidence, why don't you take it out in the first place? Or such a misunderstanding wouldn't occur. The gazes of the Qixing Palace's disciples towards Hishi immediately became cold and angry as soon as they heard the crown prince's words. This little boy obviously had evidence but didn't take it out, which makes their elder offended Shen Sun. Wasn't it obvious that he wanted to embarrass them? Hishi casually stroked her hair and chuckled. "Oh, the situation was too intense and I was frightened. I couldn't remember that I had evidence for a while." The prince choked after hearing the words. He could speak for a moment. Those who were there all saw Shi was watching calmly, but he easily made a comeback at the end. No one would believe that she was scared. Seeing everyone looking at him for being shameless, Hushi couldn't help but smirk. "Prince, blame me for giving evidence too late. Is it that if I provide you the evidence, then Prince will let the third prince pay his life for Feng Lianying?" The prince immediately froze when he heard those words. His face looked extremely ugly. "Since you won't, what is the difference for taking it out early or late? You're making a sophistry." The prince hadn't spoken yet. Nalan Ziyun had taken a step forward, yelling at Hushi, "It's clear that you are cunning and you don't want the other to live better. If you take the evidence out early, this matter wouldn't be so serious. Ziyun, watch your words." Until Nalan Ziyun had finished speaking, Xia Yichen said softly, "Did you forget that we are here to apologize to young master Shi?" Nalan Ziyun gave a cold humph, but he still gritted his teeth. "Sorry young master Shi, we misunderstood you just now." Hushi looked at him coldly and suddenly lowered her voice. "Do you know Nalan Hushi?" Nalan Ziyun was first stunned. Then a trace of disgust flashed through her eyes, but her face did not show it. "Nalan Hushi is my sister. Why does young master Shi know my sister?" Hushi neither nodded or shook his head. "Young master Nalan, do you know how your sister is doing now?" "My sister is of course doing well." Nalan Ziyun frowned, wondering what Hushi meant. Her body is unwell, so she has been raised in another courtyard. But both father and mother treat her as the third miss of Nalan family. She has the best food and clothing. Why does young master Shi asks this? Live well. There was a mocking smile on the corner of Hushi's lips, and her eyes looked gloomy. "I didn't mean anything, but I just saw your sister occasionally somewhere, so I'm curious." Then she looked at the prince. "I heard that the prince intends to marry Naran family's third miss as a concubine?" The prince was astounded as he heard this. He didn't understand how the topic shifted to him. "Ziyun did tell me that her sister is beautiful, virtuous, and talented. I did have this intention, but getting a concubine still needs the approval of Father Emperor and Dr. Nalan. Why does young master Shi ask this?" The prince looked suspiciously at the handsome young man in front of him. He secretly thought, he put so much effort in inquiring about Nalan Hushi's news. Is it that he has intention to Nalan family's third miss? However, that day, after listening to Nalan Ziyun's words, he also investigated the third miss of the Nalan family, but the fact made him disappointed. Not only did third Miss Nalan look ugly and undisciplined, but she also had no place in Nalan family getting bullied. Only someone kind and innocent like Ziyun would believe that his sister had been living a good life. However, if this Shiyu is really interested in Nalan Hushi, does it mean that this Nalan Hushi still has some value? The prince carefully pondered about it, but Nalan Ziyun stared fiercely at Hushi. He didn't know why the man suddenly mentioned his sister. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.